The time is 6 o'clock exactly. Good morning to you on this Monday, the 13th of November.
You're tuned into Breakfast with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster.
Leading the news this morning, is it all over for Suella? Speculation mounts over a potential cabinet reshuffle that could see the Prime Minister oust the Home Secretary. Grant Shapps was the latest cabinet minister to distance himself.
The Home Secretary is perfectly within her rights to call for strict action to be taken. I wouldn't have quite put it in her language. It's not the language I would have used.
And the protest blame game, 145 arrested, 7 charged over Remembrance Weekend, with the vast majority being described as counter-protesters. Police are still on the hunt for more demonstrators.
And we take a look at the legacy of Sir Bobby Charlton as the former Manchester United and England footballer is laid to rest at Manchester Cathedral later today.
And Paul Coyte's here with all your sport.
Absolutely. More on Bobby Charlton, of course. An incredible game at Chelsea yesterday, so he drew 4-4 with Manchester City.
Yeah. Is that it?
Is that not enough for you? What do you want from me?
Yeah, that was a heck of a game.
It was a game. It was a game and a half.
Now, we do want to say to you, wherever you are in the country, terrible driving conditions this morning, as Isabel and I will testify. Relentless torrential rain coming your way. Jonathan Vautry will have the forecast.
Storm Debbie is providing us with a very unsettled start to the new working week. Disruption from heavy rain and strong winds is possible during today, so do join me later for all the details.
This rain thing, please record it for us. Let us know if it's your way, because we will say to you, I was in a 4x4 coming in this morning. I would not like to have done it in a normal car.
Yeah, it was the worst journey I've had in some time, and quite frightening, actually. Lots of water on the road. Be part of our programme. Let us know if you've got lots of standing water and worried about your commute, or indeed get involved on any of the topics we're covering this morning.
I think the commute's going to be very interesting, because wherever you are, Cardiff, Manchester, London, wherever, as soon as you get to rush hour traffic situation, I just cannot see things moving. Just an ordinary spat of rain brings cities to a halt.
This is a lot of water.
This is not ordinary. gbviews@gbnews.com or tweet at GBNews and send us your pictures.
Welcome to the programme. A Tory civil war is brewing this morning as speculation mounts over the possibility of a cabinet reshuffle, one that could see Suella Braverman ousted as Home Secretary.
Now, it's believed Number 10 is still considering punishing her over her newspaper article in which she accused police of double standards for letting the pro-Palestinian march go ahead on Armistice Day.
She also called those protesting for a ceasefire in Gaza hate marchers. Well, the Labour leader and the Mayor of London have demanded she's sacked.
In an interview with us, Grant Shapps is the latest cabinet minister to distance himself from the Home Secretary.
Job as Home Secretary is to make sure that, quite properly, that the powers exist, and then the powers are then used within the operational independence of the police to make sure that marches and protests are properly policed, and where the laws have been broken, as they clearly have been in some cases, that those prosecutions take place. That is what a Home Secretary is there for. Now, I wouldn't have quite put it in her language. It's not the language I would have used, but the point still stands.
And there are still rows about whether the protests on Armistice Day should have even gone ahead. On Saturday, 300,000 people marched through central London calling for a ceasefire in Gaza.
But it wasn't without trouble.
Why was there a yes in there for? The Metropolitan Police saying 145 people were arrested, the vast majority of whom were counter-protesters.
9 officers were injured, 7 men have been charged over disorder offences.
Investigations into other offences, including anti-Semitic hate crimes, continue.
Well, despite the political rows and the protests, the nation still remained focused on honouring our servicemen and women.
King Charles led the nation in tribute to those who paid the ultimate sacrifice. Our royal correspondent Cameron Walker has this report.
camaraderie, solidarity, and solemn remembrance. A chance to honour those who died for our freedoms, which for some included the freedom to protest. Many exercised that right on Saturday, much of it peaceful, but clashes broke out. Sunday, though, was a time for silent reflection. King Charles led the nation in tribute, laying a wreath at the cenotaph alongside his son, the Prince of Wales. The Duke of Edinburgh and the Princess Royal also paid their respects, and the Queen's equerry laid a wreath on her behalf. She, the Princess of Wales, and other members of the royal family watched on from the balconies of the Foreign Office. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer led political tributes, united as one to honour our fallen soldiers. Close to 10,000 former servicemen and women took part in the Veterans March Past, the royal salute taken by the Princess Royal on Horse Guards Parade. Philippa Rawlinson from the Royal British Legion explains what the royal family means to those marching.
We know there's a very close relationship between the whole of the royal household and the armed forces community, and it means a lot to the veterans to have a senior member of the royal family here with them today taking their salute. Makes them incredibly proud.
The work of our armed forces spreads far and wide. Not all of it glamorous or particularly exciting, but important work happens every day to keep Britain safe. RAF veteran Nikki Burdett suggests it's all about putting your country before yourself.
Veterans come in all shapes and sizes, and what we don't often see on the news is the work that the military people are doing in the background, and all of our security services actually. Just because you can't see it, it doesn't mean it's not happening, and it doesn't mean that people aren't putting their lives on the line every single day.
In bombarded French countryside in World War I, radiant poppies continued to thrive. A symbol of remembrance and hope for a peaceful future in an uncertain world. Cameron Walker, GB News.
The studio, we have James Heal, James, the political correspondent at The Spectator, with us. OK, Suella Braverman, is she looking to get sacked?
I wouldn't say she's actively looking to get sacked, but I think that she has real differences with the Prime Minister. And we've seen those sort of play out over the past few months or so, and particularly heightened up this past fortnight. And I think there is a serious difference of opinion within the party between the MPs, the minority, I'd say, who support Suella Braverman really ardently, and the majority who I think are getting a bit tired of it.
If they are the minority, why worry about them?
Because the Conservative Party is a fragile coalition, and that I think Rishi Sunak is seen as needing to keep together those MPs in more red wall seats along those traditional blue wall seats for 12 months or so before an election.
It's interesting because, I mean, as you say, they've got quite a lot of differences. They need each other, or they at least certainly used to need each other. I mean, he got her support to become Prime Minister, and, you know, the deal was she got that job and that she was free to do her own thing. Certainly seems as though that relationship is breaking down, at least if not publicly, behind the scenes with that Times article last week. If he doesn't sack her, is he weak? Or, you know, what would be the reasons for keeping her?
So I think the reasons for keeping her, I think there's a couple. One of which is that she's seen as being able perhaps to reach different parts of the country, different parts of the party than Rishi Sunak is. Also perhaps the sense that she can say things that he, as Prime Minister, might not be able to. But I think it's also, as you say, about diminishing returns. And I think after a series of incidents right now where minister after minister is going out on morning rounds, you saw this with Grant Shapps yesterday, you saw this with Jeremy Hunt on Friday, and all they're being asked, do you agree with Suella Braverman or not, Tory splits being the theme, I think perhaps that calculation, as you say, Isabel, is tipping towards one conclusion.
What do you think she's saying that the Prime Minister's not able to? Is it about the homeless? Is it about the police? What?
Well, I think, yeah, being able perhaps to embrace some of the measures which, the Prime Minister himself would shy away from. And there's a certain logic to that in terms of being able to say things on immigration, perhaps, that as Prime Minister you wouldn't perhaps want to be able to say. But I do think that, it's reached the point now where there's increasingly a sense among mainstream Conservative opinion in the party that this is distracting from the government's real priorities. And so, therefore, they think, they're a bit done with Suella, and that's why there's talk of a reshuffle.
Now, you can tell us more about this than I would know. Apparently, there is something called the Whitehall Community communications grid, which is a big table,
Yes.
and every day it's published, which says what the government's agenda is and all of that. Apparently it's blank for today. And that means everybody's saying, oh, they're planning to do a big reshuffle.
Well,
but would really the Prime Minister want to lose his Home Secretary 3 days before this big Rwanda Supreme Court hearing on Wednesday?
Well, this is the big issue, is that, as I understand it, there's blanks today and blanks Wednesday, and of course Wednesday is when that Supreme Court verdict comes down. Yeah, this is what we saw last time, where we saw the reshuffle which replaced Ben Wallace with Grant Shapps. It was just announced on the morning, and suddenly the whole grid was cleared. But it's not just the grid in abstract, it's also the fact that Civil Service last week were told to prepare briefing packs for potential reshuffle. This doesn't happen, you know, it's an infrequent thing, so sometimes it's prepared even though they're not used. So that's why there's a lot of heightened talk within Westminster and Whitehall about this happening. Personally, I think we're more likely to see it on Wednesday than we are today, but it can't be denied that I think that this is going to be the week it happens.
Rumour mill swirling about who would get what job. So say Suella's out, who's in?
That's the question. I think that it would probably be someone perhaps with a bit of a Home Office experience, or was also seen on the sort of right of the party. So I think there's two different categories there. One of which you could have someone who's a sort of loyalist to Rishi, someone like Mark Harper, Robert Jenrick, who's the Minister of State for Immigration, or perhaps you might want to put someone like Kemi Badenoch, who's probably going to be a sort of centre-right contender in the next leadership contest, someone who's been seen as more loyal to Rishi Sunak perhaps than Suella has. So someone like that could be a good person to fit into the brief. 12 months or so out from an election, you're going to want someone who can go out there and be a bit of a street fighter for you.
How, James, is she emerging from all of this? How's she looking after the march at the weekend, after what she said about the homeless?
I think that, as you say, Eamonn, there, twice in a week she sort of blew up the government grid, as Isabel was just saying there, what the government wanted to be talking about. So there's sort of question marks over that. I think that ahead of the protest on Saturday, there were fears it would be a lot worse than it was. There were 145 arrests out of 300,000 protesters. So there were some disturbing scenes there, but equally it wasn't as bad as some feared beforehand. And I think that if it had been much worse, then I think she could have said, perhaps, I'll be vindicated from that.
Except the police came out and said that the right-wing groups, the violence caused by them was unprecedented. And there are people today saying that is directly the responsibility of Suella Braverman, who publicly undermined them. People came out thinking it was their job to protect the cenotaph. Do you think you can connect those dots?
Yeah, I mean, there are certainly some MPs who are saying that privately. I think that it's clearly going to be an issue in terms of the rhetoric. I think what the Prime Minister was willing to say last week and was sort of critical of the Met Police's decision to let this march go ahead, that was very different from what Suella Braverman chose to go a bit further and suggest that the police were biased in that Times article. So I think that that's the key thing. How much agency can you subscribe to those words of the politicians? I think it's a debatable question, but it's one MPs are thinking about today.
OK.
James, appreciate your take on things. Keep us posted throughout the morning. James Seedle is the political correspondent with The Spectator. Thank you very much indeed. We want to draw your attention to the weather situation. Heavy rain throughout the country. Will it affect you? Let's go to meteorological journalist Jim Dale on this one. Jim, what warnings are out there this morning?
Yeah, good morning. It's this is Storm Debbie, DEBI, the new one, and it was named by Met Éireann, the Irish Met Office, rather than our own Met Office, and it is at this moment in time the centre of the low is the storm is over the northern part of the Republic of Ireland. The very heavy rain is over Northern Ireland and into southwest Scotland. There's rain elsewhere. Most areas waking up to rain this morning. I wouldn't necessarily, for most of England and Wales at this moment in time, I wouldn't say it's OTT stuff. But yeah, the warnings are out there. They're mainly yellow warnings.
Jim, just let me interrupt you there. We've both travelled in various parts of Surrey today. I'm telling you, my friend, it is OTT.
Okay, for you, maybe I can see on the radar just to my right here, there's some heavy rain down in that area, just moving out through Kent and East Anglia area. So you're right with that one.
But what I would say with it, Jim, if it's bad in Surrey, it's going to be bad in London. What I'm saying, looking as we get into London and flooded roads, flooded tributaries leading into London, that is going to have a big repercussion come 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock this morning.
Yeah, it is. And the reason for it is the saturated ground that we've had for the last couple of weeks. It's not so much what's come down out of the sky. Yes, it's obviously added to the pile. River levels are high. Water tables are right at the very top. That's the reason why you're seeing what you're seeing. And it is very picky in terms of where it goes. But as I said, the main thrust of rain at the moment in terms of the heavy stuff is over Northern Ireland. That's where the echoes are, and into southwest Scotland. And it's not just rain as well, Eamonn, as well. It's the wind that goes with it. So it's wet and windy. Those gusts up to 50, 60, 70 miles an hour across northern parts of England, Wales and Northern Ireland this morning. A little bit less as we come further south. So yeah, it's a difficult day. It's a treacherous day in parts. So certainly watch your step if you are travelling this morning in these next few hours. It should all start to ebb away by the time we get to the afternoon and through the course of the afternoon. So this is quite a fast-moving storm, unlike previous ones like Babette that hung around for 3 days.
Are there any more storms forecast for the coming weeks? Is there any let-up? Because it just feels like it's storm after storm at the moment.
Yeah, good call. There's a potential one again for Wednesday night, Thursday, through Thursday. Now, if it gets named, it's going to be called Storm Elin, E-L-I-N. Yeah, I don't know where they get these names from, but anyway, it is. But nonetheless, that's another area of low pressure coming in off the Atlantic, the conveyor belt, potentially intensifying to a named storm. So that's one to watch for Thursday time. I've got some better news further down the lane, if you like, that this time next week, we should be settling down, and I can mention the word high pressure at last.
Oh, good.
OK, Jim, thank you. And it was quite a nice weekend. It was quite autumnal and whatever, yeah. Jim, thank you very much indeed for putting us in the picture. As Jim said, a lot of the problem being caused by high water tables. But London, certainly, I am telling you now, and I know I'm going to be right on this, that when rush hour traffic starts, forget it in London.
Just remember, don't get up lots of speed in this weather, because when you hit unexpected blocks of water, then you're out of control and aquaplaning.
Do you know any drivers this has happened to this morning?
I was on a motorway where you're supposed to drive fast, but I was finding a lot of standing water on the motorway, and it was really scary.
Was this the same driver that gets flashed at for speeding? All right, OK. But
always in a rush.
Who's always in a rush?
I am.
See, if you would just be like me and leave in time.
What time did you get in this morning?
But that was on exceptional circumstances.
Yeah, same circumstances I was battling through.
No, it is pretty scary out there. Get your cameras out. Get a...
If you're safe to do so.
Photograph. Yeah, I mean, out your top window, I think will be fine.
Not while you're driving.
Get in touch with us this morning. Let us see what the rain is like in your area. You know, the Met Office people, they'll say, oh, there's no more rain forecast and everything's going to be OK. But it's not going to be OK, because the drains are overflowing, the water table's far too high, really deep stuff on the roads.
Yeah, horrible.
Really, really deep.
If you are tuning in on the radio or indeed watching us on the TV, you are very welcome. It's 6:17. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel.
A reminder of our top stories. Speculation mounts over a potential cabinet reshuffle that could see the Prime Minister oust the Home Secretary. Grant Shapps was the latest cabinet minister to distance himself from Suella Braverman.
The Home Secretary is perfectly within her rights to call for strict action to be taken. I wouldn't have quite put it in her language. It's not the language I would have used.
And the protest blame game. 145 arrested, 7 charged over Remembrance Weekend, with the vast majority being described as counter-protesters. Police are still on the hunt for more demonstrators.
Just to reiterate, those weather warnings in place for much of the UK and Northern Ireland. I think Northern Ireland is the UK, but anyway. A Storm Debbie is set to sweep the nation with strong winds and heavy rainfall.
Now, today is the funeral of the footballing legend Sir Bobby Charlton. The procession will make its way past Old Trafford, home to Manchester United, and then through the city to Manchester Cathedral. The
service is expected to be attended by around 1,000 people. Many, many more set to pay their respects to the football legend, hopefully not affected by the awful rainfall that is predicted for today as well. Well, our North West of England reporter Sophie Reaper has been reflecting on his career and what he meant to fans all over the world.
Charlton, another! Saying goodbye to one of the greats of English football. Last month, Sir Bobby Charlton passed away, and today thousands will gather in Manchester to say a final farewell. Part of England's legendary 1966 World Cup winning squad, Sir Bobby also added Ballon d'Or winner to his list of achievements that same year.
Bobby Charlton.
At the time of his retirement in 1970, he was the nation's most capped player and the record goal scorer, with a total of 106 appearances and 49 goals. He also became a legend at Manchester United, making his debut aged 18 in 1956. One of the Busby babes, Charlton was part of a squad that would lift the FA and European Cups, as well as taking 3 league titles. But despite this, former United teammate Alex Stepney remembers that Sir Bobby was always pushing for more.
Whether we were winning, or whether we were losing at half-time or drawing at half-time, Bobby, we can score 4 more. We can score 4 goals. And that was the way Manchester United were playing. That's what he wanted. And his passing, his great goal scoring, and, you know, it was poetry in motion when he picked the ball up.
Remembered as one of United's all-time greats, Sir Bobby will also always mean a lot to the club's fans.
Playing for England as well as Manchester United, all he needed to do was pass the ball to him near the edge of the penalty area and he would belt it into the corner.
He was such a fantastic player and a great guy. You know, he was a lovely man.
I saw him play maybe 20 times in the early 70s before he retired. The greatest player in the world, really.
Today, Manchester's streets will be lined with people gathering to pay their respects as Sir Bobby's funeral procession makes its way through the city where he'll always be remembered. Sophie Reaper, GB News.
To remember Sir Bobby, Paul Coit with us now this morning. Paul.
I think Bobby Charlton, I said this after he'd passed away, and it's often when you get a famous person or a great player, people will then come out and say, you know, the greatest player that we've ever seen, and, you know, you're going to get all these superlatives. But Bobby Charlton, there was no question about that. And I think with Bobby Charlton, he was the first worldwide, I think, English superstar, because if you look at how football is these days, everybody can see everything, you know, whether they see it on YouTube, they see it on TV. It's so easy to see football. But back when Bobby Charlton was playing, the only chance, I mean, even in this country, that you probably get is listening to it on the radio. But everybody around the world knew who Bobby Charlton was.
Power in the shot.
Yeah.
Would take, I mean, heavy balls, heavy leather balls, soggy pitches.
Yeah.
And this man could shoot like it was unbelievable, the power he hit a ball. Now, I made a mistake when I was in my mid-30s. I was playing in a football match against Sir Bobby, and I made this mistake of attempting to save. I was in goals, attempting to save the shot, which I did. But I swear I thought my hand was broken.
Did you really?
I swear to you, I have never felt anything as hard in my life. The way he just unleashed, with no run-up or anything else, just boom, power.
But he was a true two-footed player. So the thing is, like Izzy, you get players that are great with the right or great with the left. It should be a given that a great professional footballer would be able to do this. But he started out, I believe this to be true, going back, you know, to playing in Ashington. He would kick the ball against the wall with his right foot and realised that his left wasn't quite as good. Kept going. It's constant repetition. And then became an amazing player with. If you don't mind me saying that, I mean, I was just about to say that what he went through in '58 in Munich, I mean, the story of Bobby Charlton is incredible. Whereas he nearly died. You know, he was pulled out of the wreckage.
It affected him for the rest of his life.
Of course, but he spoke about it. It was one of those things when we talk about the war, etc., and people that very rarely speak about what they went through. Something he never discussed. But not only did he come through that, come out of the hospital, he was playing within about 2 weeks for Manchester United, and then goes on European World Cup.
He physically, facially, he looked like his brother.
Yeah.
Physically, his torso, whatever, his body was completely different.
Yeah.
He played completely differently.
Character as well, yeah.
Well, Jack.
Yeah.
I always find that to be two brothers in the England World Cup winning team. Just an incredible achievement.
And like you say, they were so different in every way, and also in character as well.
Yeah.
Bobby, you know, a little more introverted, you know, and would very, you know,
quiet.
a very quiet man who would never show off about everything that he did. You've got Jack, who was, you know, it was amazing, really. I mean, they did fall out over the years and had brotherly problems, but there was obviously huge respect amongst them. But two brothers, and also both playing for England as well. But Bobby Charlton,
their mother was the big motivation for both of them, who got them both playing in the back entries of the Northeast and whatever. So Bobby, let's not forget, he did try to be a manager at one stage.
Preston, yeah.
But he sat on the board, the football board of Manchester United, and made a lot of decisions, including bringing Alex Ferguson.
Yeah.
He was a big supporter and friend of Alex Ferguson.
And it was nice that, I mean, Manchester United just ran through him, didn't it? I mean, from the moment he went there as a 15-year-old, his entire life was dedicated to Manchester United. And interesting you say about being a manager as well, because I know Mark Lawrenson's going to join us a little bit later, and Mark Lawrenson was managed by him at Preston North End when he was a young player, because there's not many players that, and actually Mark, is one for you, is that Mark was managed by, is the only player to be managed by both Jack Charlton and Bobby Charlton.
Goodness me.
The only player to be managed by both.
The difference there.
I know, you're probably in the difference.
We should also, I mean, you talked about Manchester United ran through his veins or whatever, but also at every single Manchester United game, Sir Bobby was accompanied by his wife, Norma.
Is that right?
Yeah, Lady Norma. And just, you know, this will be a big, massive loss to her, of course, because, you know, he was her life and vice versa. She was there for him.
Obviously, absolutely, obviously goes without saying. But I think one of the saddest things is now Sir Geoff Hurst is the only player left from that 1966 World Cup winning side. And it is that curse again that's just gone through the team. Alzheimer's, dementia, you know, is the argument about whether it's to do with the heading the balls, etc. That's another argument altogether for another day. But we've lost so many in the last couple of years now.
And you will know, there's no point in me saying this to Isabel. She doesn't know these things. But Suzanne Charlton.
Yes.
The weather presenter for BBC.
Yeah.
Is that his daughter?
Yeah.
No. You can connect the dots really
there
well.
You go.
Well done.
Genius. Oh, well, our thoughts to Susanna and Norma today and all of his family. A sad day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you. Right, 6:27. Time to check on your weather. As we were saying a little bit earlier, a little bit fruity out there today. Here's Jonathan Vaughtry.
Fruity?
A little bit fruity. Here's Jonathan.
Hello there, good morning. I'm Jonathan Vaughtry here with your GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. Storm Debbie, named by Met Éireann, the Irish Weather Service, is providing a very unsettled start to this new working week. It has significantly deepened overnight, and those isobars are really squeezing together to provide some very strong gusts of wind, up to 80 miles an hour along coastal areas of the Irish Sea and over the Pennines, but even other inland areas of northern England and North Wales could see gusts of 60 to 65 miles an hour. So please do take care over the course of today, because some disruption is possible from those strong winds, but also the heavy rain as well across Northern Ireland, Northern England, also a focus for eastern Scotland during the afternoon as well. Southern areas of England and Wales seeing some drier, brighter interludes, perhaps into the far south of Northern Ireland later on as well, but it is still going to be a very blustery day here nonetheless, so that will take the edge off the feel of things, even if the thermometer does say 15 or 16 degrees Celsius. During this evening and overnight, Storm Debbie will eventually clear its way off into the North Sea, so most of the rainfall taking it away with it, but we'll see some blustery showers pushing their way in from the west as we head into the second half of the night. With all of that around and still quite a breeze in place, we're not expecting it to turn too chilly overnight, generally temperatures holding around 6 to 10 degrees Celsius. Tuesday then sees a day of showers across all areas of the UK. Some of those could be heavy at times, with some hail and thunderstorms in the mixture as well. Quite a lot of clouds still in between those showers for northern England up into Scotland, but perhaps parts of Northern Ireland, Wales and central southern areas of England seeing some sunny spells in there as well. But some further wet and windy weather are on the cards for the rest of the week. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Jonathan. The latest on the Israeli-Gaza conflict. The French President Emmanuel Macron calling on Israel to agree a ceasefire.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamonn.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us. From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
It's 6:31. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel. Here's a reminder of our top stories this morning.
Speculation mounting over a potential cabinet reshuffle that could see the Prime Minister oust the Home Secretary. Grant Shapps was the latest cabinet minister to distance himself from Suella Braverman.
And the Home Secretary is perfectly within her rights to call for strict action to be taken. I wouldn't have quite put it in her language. It's not the language I would have used.
And the protest blame game. 145 arrested, 7 charged over Remembrance Weekend, with the vast majority being described as counter-protesters. Police are still on the hunt, though, for more demonstrators.
Weather warnings are in place for much of the UK. Storm Debbie will sweep the country with strong winds and heavy rainfall already taking effect in much of southeast England.
And we take a look at the legacy of Sir Bobby Charlton, as the former Manchester United and England footballer is today laid to rest at Manchester Cathedral.
The situation in Gaza, the Israeli military has agreed to help evacuate babies from a hospital there to a safer facility.
Israel's offer of a short-term ceasefire comes as international condemnation grows over its continued bombing of Gaza. The World Health Organization has said that Al-Shifa Hospital is not functioning as a hospital anymore.
Meanwhile, the French president has called on Israel to agree a ceasefire, saying that there is no justification for bombing civilians. Joining us now, defence editor for the Evening Standard, Robert Fox. Robert, good morning. We look at this the situation about the condemnation of this blanket bombing that is going on. How much longer can Israel continue with that tactic, or how much longer will they continue with that tactic?
Well, Prime Minister Netanyahu has said that they will go on for another year. And it's very interesting reading the commentary, the English language commentary in the Israeli press yesterday. Frankly, there were not many that agreed with him. The remarks by President Macron of France, which you've quoted, have had quite a lot of resonance around the world. And of course, the Hamas Medical Authority has been astute in putting out photographs of very small babies in incubators where they say the power has been cut. I think that it cannot go on for much longer for Israel. And I think that the Israeli military seem to sense this. But they're having a tough time because they're really getting down to the hard part of the fight, which is in the tunnels and against the Hamas stay-behind commandos. And still a lot of the command And that is difficult because there are a lot of civilians down those tunnels as well.
It's this ongoing situation around the hospitals that has caused sort of public outcry in the West, certainly, isn't it? And you were saying there that there was talk about whether or not this could continue. Well, the United States have stepped in and said they back Israeli claims that actually Hamas are using hospitals as military bases. If they have the support of America, presumably Israel can continue as long as they want to.
Well, there's another problem in America, Isabel. I've just been reading the latest opinion polls. That there is a lot of criticism now of the way President Biden personally has been handling it. There's not much criticism, frankly, of Tony Blinken, the top diplomat, their Secretary of State, their equivalent of foreign minister. But I'm beginning to wonder really what is going to happen in the court of world opinion. And this is where actually what Europe, what Rishi Sunak thinks as to how sustainable this is beginning to count, because the other thing that nobody is really discussing over much, but you can be sure that both Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, that's the military headquarters as well as the political headquarters, will be discussing it with Joe Biden, is how much ammunition can they go on using. I think that this thing has got days, a few weeks at most to run.
Here's another thing, Robert, and this reflects on all of us. Ukraine, Russia, where's that gone to in the news agenda? Disappeared. It's as if it's finished, that nothing's happening there. Isn't it true that our attention span wanes after a few weeks or months and we move on to something else?
Well, somebody who understands the media very well, like Volodymyr Zelensky, completely understands what you've just been saying, Eamonn, and is extremely worried about the support. But I've been talking to military advisors, Brit military advisors, that have been very much involved with Ukraine, and they're very, very keen that Russia should not be allowed to deflect attention from what is going on in Ukraine, where things are at a critical, not severe, but critical stage, that they don't want Russia to take the attention away from Ukraine. Ukraine is preparing to get through a very, very tough winter. They say they can do it, but they say they're going to need a lot of assistance from the West.
Okay, Robert Fox, Defence Editor for the Evening Standard. Always good to get your analysis. Thanks very much indeed for joining us.
Yeah.
Thank you. Still to come, not something you see every day. We'll be discussing a lion that has been prowling the streets of Rome.
Unbelievable.
Headline makers, next.
Look at that.
Fed up of being patronised and bored to death by other afternoon news shows? Me too. So I thought, if you want a job done properly, do it yourself. News as it breaks on TV, radio and online. All the big debates and the best guests on the topics that you actually care about. Whether you're having discussions with your mates down the pub, in your van to and from work, or around the dinner table with your family, that's the kind of stuff that this show is all about. Join me, Patrick Christie, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Acquire, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle. Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's my new teeth.
It's your new teeth. I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So here we are on a Monday morning, and we lay out the front pages of the newspapers for you to get a temperature gauge of what's happening news-wise. The Daily Mail reporting that, let's have a look, there we are, Solemn Kate paying tribute to the late Queen on Remembrance Sunday, while Suella Braverman defies critics who want her sacked.
Here's the Daily Telegraph. They're reporting on Braverman's statement saying that the hate marches must end. They also talk about heat pumps being too loud for some homes.
Guardian states that mould and squalid housing could be making the NHS crisis worse, along with reports of no power and no water in hospitals in Gaza.
Daily Star reporting that the Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt's considering pre-Christmas tax cuts to lift Tory gloom as dairy farmers are on high alert as blue tongue virus has been detected.
Oh dear, that doesn't sound good.
Nice.
Let's see your tongue. Oh, be careful. Daily Star reports perfect storm. This is Storm Debbie that we're talking about today. Heavy rainfall coming with Storm Debbie. You'll wake up to that this morning. We also hear strong winds on the way too.
You see, we said Daily Star was reporting the blue tongue virus, and then we said the Daily Star was reporting on the perfect storm. I'm not sure which one it was, but we will work it out and get back to you on that. We're joined to go through the papers this morning, and indeed headline makers, as we like to call it, with former editor of the Daily Star, Dawn Neeson, and the political commentator, Alex Armstrong. Welcome to both of you. Dawn, should we start by focusing on the King yesterday, who managed to stop everybody from arguing for 2 minutes at least, and led the nation as we held a silence yesterday morning.
You know what, and it was lovely. I every year, because I'm normally working on it, covering it for someone or another, and every year I swear I'm going to be a professional journalist, I'm not going to get emotionally involved, and every year I'm like biting my lip and sort of like, it's just incredibly emotive. I mean, to see the thousands of people who have served, are still serving, filing past the cenotaph, to see the royals there. Obviously, it's King Charles's first as king. And I think the Express have got a great front page where they've got a picture of both Charles and Kate with tears in their eyes. And I just think it's just so emotional. And I'm so pleased, Isabel, that it was respected, it went well. I think the police force looking after it did an amazing job, to be honest with you. They've taken so much stick this week.
Do you know what I think's great? We put all the attention on the cenotaph in London, but Alex, around most towns and villages in the whole land, there is some sort of cenotaph commemoration, and I think that is excellent, the people who turn out there for their parades and to pay their respects.
Yeah, it's beautiful, Eamonn, and it's such a lovely tradition that we do this every year, and we've been doing it for so long. I think the British people honour this day every year in such an eloquent and beautiful day. I mean, we're there to remember the people that gave their lives for our freedom. And, you know, I think you're right, Eamonn. It's just beautiful scenes. Beautiful, beautiful scenes.
Well, here's a scene I wouldn't like to see. I wouldn't like to be walking out onto the street or going to get into my car and see a lion in front of me, a real big lion. Have a look. This is from TikTok, and this is on the streets of Rome.
Me.
Do we know what happened to the lion, Alex?
We do. So eventually it was caught. I mean, you can see there's obviously people tracking it there on the streets. Eventually it was caught, no one was harmed, the lion was fine. It was returned to the zoo, as far as I'm aware, without any problems. I'm sure that lion will have some other very good stories to tell, but quite incredible scenes. I mean, you would be very surprised if you were walking, having a late night walk, and you saw that heading towards you, wouldn't you?
I think they have a problem in Italy with large I guess predators, but also they had some elephants on a ring road around Rome that either got out of a circus or a zoo, and there's sort of prompts a national debate about whether or not they should have large animals at circuses.
Unlike the UK, where we don't have animals in circuses anymore, Italy does still have the lion.
And I think the theory was anti-large animal in circuses who released the lion. That's the theory. 3 men were seen hanging around. Can you imagine that? It could have gone horribly wrong.
Well, thankfully, no one was hurt. I mean, the lion was sedated and taken back, whether it wanted to or not, to the circus. But can you imagine sort of like, you know, wandering out from a night out thinking, I might have just had too much to drink with the lion in front of me, and it's like,
And there was another incident, I think, in Italy when a tiger turned on. It got
That's
released,
right.
and it turned on. I think there was at the circus trainer.
That's
and
right.
Played with its body, this man's body, for half an hour before they could get it away from the tiger.
You see,
a cat would play with a ball
with a
of
mouse
wool.
or something.
You shouldn't have animals in captivity. They're just not designed for that, are they? They're designed for the wild, particularly if you're forcing them to perform these horrible acts for people, which I don't think many people enjoy anymore. I certainly don't enjoy seeing it.
You feel uncomfortable watching it now, wouldn't you?
Yes, you do, yeah.
Yeah. I can remember as a child, obviously, going to circuses and seeing animals perform, whatever. Now you just wouldn't even enter your head to do such a thing.
No.
Dawn, 1 in 4 teachers think banter is a serious problem. Oh, this does my head in.
It's National Anti-Bullying Day today.
Well, you know, banter can harden you to things. I mean, banter is humour. Do you know what? Banter is so much part of the Northern Irish personality.
And the British, I think. Well, as in...
You're full of banter, you are.
What were you going to say there?
I think your banter and my banter are two different things. But, no, banter, there are certain people from Liverpool, from Newcastle, from Glasgow. You tell me life without banter. I am so against this. This will harden kids up. I just don't get the problem. I just don't get it.
There's a fine line, isn't it, when it stops being banter, which I think is a good thing. It does harden you up, absolutely, and you have to take the rough with the smooth. Otherwise, you're not going to cope with real life when you grow up, are you? But if it goes over,
do you think you have to put up with banter with me?
I'm very capable of putting up with banter, and I do think that's, you know, I've been toughened up. But if someone said to my son, "Oh, Chubby, all right, Chubby," was just banter. That's horrible.
But you wouldn't say
bullying.
it. You'd be much. You know, it's like you talking about your witch's outfit last week, and I said to you, you should take that nose off.
And
now.
the next day, I called the plastic surgeon, and I said, "My presenter says I've got a big nose."
If you haven't got a sense of humour from that, good luck.
No,
do you know
I
what?
do.
You're welcome
but
to
I'm
the
talking about
world
kids
that you're going to inhabit. Wokeless, humourless.
I agree. I do agree. But there is sometimes a grey area.
There is a grey
and there are kids who are bullied, and the bullies say it was just banter.
Yes. But I do think we do need to... And 1 in 4 teachers, I think 1 in 4 teachers probably need to harden up a bit themselves as well. There is a difference, and I need to identify bullying and banter. Having a joke with someone, because when you grow up and you're in the workplace, as you've just demonstrated so well, used to, you put up with banter. It's a part of everyday life.
You know what worries me, Dawn, is that I think that sometimes we get to this part in our society where we sort of constantly trying to cancel things, and then we'll take something too far. And I do agree, there is obviously a line to be crossed, but it's part of our culture to have a little bit of banter with each other. I know when I lived in America that you couldn't really make a joke without someone getting overly offended, and that's sort of bred into the system very young. So I do think that we should just, you know, lay off children a bit.
I was hosting Teachers' Awards on Friday night, and there was an award for being kind. And I put it to the teacher. I said, look, I just like, you know, however laudable this is, I said, who are you teaching these kids to be kind for? Because the world out there that you're grooming them for, believe me, is not kind. You don't get kind estate agents. You don't get kind lawyers. You don't get kind journalists. You don't get kind... You go right through things. People are giving you bills. Believe me, they're not kind. And I do genuinely wonder what we are preparing kids for.
We're not preparing them for real life, I agree. And the thing is, the more people are encouraged to be kind, #be kind, the worse they are. I mean, if you look at someone that's giving you abuse, not me personally, thankfully I don't get too much, don't start now, but if you look at some of the things people say on social media, and they've always got a #be kind in their bio, because it's like you're doing the polar opposite.
But if we give up on teaching our kids to be kind and celebrating kindness, then it's only going to get worse. I believe in really drilling it into my kids, you know, kill it with kindness. If someone's horrible to you, don't lower yourself. You be kind in reply. And, you know, maybe that's not preparing them for life, but I'd rather they went through life as decent people.
Well, my philosophy in life is if someone kicks you, kick them harder. That's exactly... I will be like in the film The Outlaw Josie Wales. I be the outlaw Josie Wales, Clint Eastwood, right? So basically his attitude was, leave me alone, we'll all get on fine. But if you annoy me, and you draw a gun at me, you're dead. And And I think that's the philosophy.
I don't think anyone here would have got to where they were with being too agreeable and too soft either. So I think there's something to be said to say that, you know, it's good to be a bit
Alex,
tough.
that's very good, because I look at you and I think you're sweet and you're saintly,
thanks,
and you're just you just
inner core.
Like that lion wandering through those streets, you know.
Listen, we've got to pause now. We are joined by the Government Minister, but we say thank you to Dawn and to Alex for now. It leads us perfectly, I think, on to James Heapy.
He'll not be
Minister for
kind.
Armed
I wonder how
Forces.
kind you are, James Heapy, hey? We're talking hashtag be kind.
I'm always kind, other than when by necessity I'm not.
Do you think the Prime Minister will be kind to Suella Braverman today, who many people in herself think that is very unkind?
Oh, look, that is... whatever the Prime Minister has got planned for today has not been shared with me. And to be honest with you, there is more than enough work for me to do here in the Ministry of Defence rather than worrying about reshuffles.
Do you think that the Home Secretary has overstepped the mark? I mean, Sir Keir Starmer has come out and said that she's demeaned her office by whipping up divisions, and Hamza Yusuf, whose family were caught up in Palestine, said that she has fanned the flames. And the police themselves have said that violence by right-wing groups this weekend near the Cenotaph was unprecedented. A lot of people say that was directly linked to some of the language used by the Home Secretary.
Well, look, I personally, if I had been writing that opinion piece, I wouldn't have used some of the language that she used. But it is also true to say that Tommy Robinson and his thugs were planning their protest, their counter-protest on Saturday, well before the Home Secretary published her article. It's also true to say that the government of the day does have a responsibility to hold the police to account when there is a feeling amongst society that maybe policing is not being conducted in the way that they would like, and that's perfectly reasonable. Now, normally that would, and in fact, in my view, it should be done privately to chief constables. That's certainly how I reflect my concerns to my local chief constable down in Somerset whenever the community come to me with those. So look, I think, I wouldn't have used that language. The things on Saturday were planned before she published her article, and it is reasonable for the government of the day to share with the police concerns of the communities that we represent, and the Prime Minister has said that he will continue to do that.
How do you think we have emerged, Minister, from the commemoration weekend?
Eamonn, sorry, can you say that again?
How do you think we have emerged, looking back, over those 2 days, the protests that took place and the commemorations that took place? How do you think we are as a country having emerged from those 2 days?
Well, look, I think fundamentally, in war memorials in villages and towns across the country and here in London at the Cenotaph, the moment of remembrance was marked immaculately, as it always is. And that's a great credit to the branches of the Royal British Legion and town and village councils across the land who organised those commemorations so brilliantly. And it's fantastic that so many people from the local community turn out to pay their respects. I was in Shepton Mallet and Cheddar in my constituency yesterday, and the turnout was impressive. And the sense of remembering something bigger than ourselves was as palpable as it ever is. But I think, what you're really talking about is what happened on Saturday, and the fact that our Armistice Day weekend, Remembrance Sunday weekend, has been so politicised and so marred in violence. And I do think that that is something that should be a concern to us all. Our society has become rather intolerant of different views.
Funny, you say that's what I'm referring to, and actually, I think I would refer more to what happened in Shepton Mallet and everywhere like Shepton Mallet around the country, because that is the real Britain. London gets the concentration and London gets the headlines, but the people who go out of their way to show that this is something special to them and would never think of disrespecting a Cenotaph commemoration.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And there were people who were stood with me at Remembrance Sunday events in my constituency yesterday who I know disagree with my politics profoundly, and I disagree with theirs. But in those gatherings in small towns like Shepton or villages like Cheddar, those politics were an irrelevance because of the bigger thing that we were there to commemorate. And it just goes to show that, we can do this. We can get it right. We can put the memory of those who paid the ultimate sacrifice in the service of our country ahead of our short-term political anger. Problem is that there are hundreds of thousands who protested on both sides of an argument earlier in the weekend that clearly couldn't.
Brings me back to your colleague Suella Braverman, because, as you say, there were problems inevitable perhaps this weekend, long before Suella Braverman wrote her article in the Times last week. But her language for a long time has been inflammatory, and she's received heavy criticism for it. She's called the protests hate marches. There are a lot of people who were protesting who believed in trying to see a ceasefire because women and children are paying a heavy price within Gaza. She called homelessness a lifestyle choice. She talked about immigration as being an invasion, and as you mentioned, she accused the police of bias at a highly sensitive national moment. Do you think the time has come for the Prime Minister to show strength and let her go?
Well, as I said, those aren't words that I would have used myself, and who serves in the government at any moment is a matter for the Prime Minister and the Prime Minister alone.
What about your colleague Johnny Mercer? He said that this Remembrance Weekend, he felt the commemorations were clouded by some of the things that she had said. Do you agree with him?
Look, I think we've discussed Remembrance Weekend. We've discussed that how at the Cenotaph yesterday, but at war memorials across the country, it was observed immaculately. But I have already reflected that I felt that the weekend at large, sadly, was let down by a lot of hate, a lot of anger and too much politics.
Your other colleague, Grant Shapps, said a week in politics is a long time. What did he mean by that?
Well, that a week in politics is a long time. It is.
What was he referring to?
Well, that time moves very quickly in politics and that a lot happens in any given day. And therefore, over the course of a week, an awful lot can happen and a lot can change. And
do you think Suella Braverman will be in her post in a week's time?
A week is a long time in politics.
I knew that was the answer. James Healy, thank you very much indeed. Lovely to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. And
thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much. And so there's other things that go on in life as well. And I became a grandpa for the second time over the weekend, 10 o'clock on Saturday morning. And here you can see that's my son Declan, that's his wife Dr. Jenny there, and that is their newborn, their number 2, Isabella. See, and there was a connection there.
Oh, I did actually congratulate Declan, saying, excellent name. He said, I thought you'd like that.
Yes, and there's Amelia, that is granddaughter number 1.
Sister.
I do wonder, is that a punch she's throwing there, or?
It doesn't actually look like she's about to punch her new baby sister, but that's a sibling rivalry thing. It happens.
Yes, it happens. You know, my brother Leonard, who's 4 years older than me, when I came along, he went to the kitchen and he got a pot and hit me over the head of it in the car.
Explains an awful lot.
Explains an awful lot.
I tried to throw my sister down the stairs.
I was 18 at the time, I should say. Thank you very much indeed, guys. Alex and Dawn will be back in about 40 minutes' time. So the question after the break is...
should Suella stay or should Suella go? That's the question on everybody's lips in Downing Street this morning. We'll be discussing it throughout the course of the programme. Stay with us for more on that.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this? It's my new teeth. It's your new teeth.
I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie, second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Ah!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
A very good morning to you. It's about to turn 7 o'clock on Monday, the 13th of November. This is Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Very good to have your company, whether you're watching, whether you're listening, whether you're online, whether you're asking your Alexa to play GB News. This is it for us this morning. Headlines are:
Is it all over for Suella? Speculations mounting over a potential cabinet reshuffle that could see the Prime Minister oust the Home Secretary. Earlier we spoke to James Heappey, Minister for Armed Forces. Here's what he had to say.
I personally, if I had been writing that opinion piece, I wouldn't have used some of the language that she used. Whatever the Prime Minister has got planned for today has not been shared with me.
And the protest blame game, 145 arrested, but only 7 charged over Remembrance Weekend, with the vast majority being described as counter-protesters. Police are still on the hunt for more demonstrators.
We take a look at the legacy of Sir Bobby Charlton as the former Manchester United and England footballer is laid to rest at Manchester Cathedral.
Paul Coit with that and your other sport. Paul, good morning.
Morning. Goals galore yesterday. Chelsea 4, Manchester City 4, Liverpool score 3, so do West Ham, so do Aston Villa. And I'm still not over the fact yet that Eamonn Holmes managed to save a shot from Bobby Charlton. I can't get over that.
At what price?
Really, that's the reason, is it? I always wondered why you walked that way. It's just down to Sir Bobby.
It's the reason.
I know it.
OK. Difficult driving conditions. Just warning you now, when you head out there, rain absolutely everywhere. The forecast today will be from Jonathan Vautry.
Storm Debbie is providing us with a very unsettled start to the new working week. Disruption from heavy rain and strong winds is possible during today, so do join me later for all the details.
We love to hear from you throughout the course of the programme. I have to say our inbox is absolutely full of support. Majority of people in support of Suella Braverman saying she has to stay. She tells it like it is. Let us know your thoughts this morning. GBViews at gbnews.com, or you can tweet us at GBnews.
I'd rather see the weather pictures personally. If it's very heavy rain around you, let us know. A Conservative civil war is brewing as speculation mounts over the possibility of a cabinet reshuffle, one that could see Suella Braverman ousted as Home Secretary.
It's believed Number 10 is still considering punishing Braverman over her newspaper article in which she accused police of a double standard for letting the pro-Palestinian march go ahead on Armistice Day. She also called those protesting for a ceasefire in Gaza hate marches. Well, the Labour leader and the Mayor of London have both demanded that she's sacked.
Just a few minutes ago, we spoke to James Heappey, James Heappey's Minister for Armed Forces. Let's hear what he had to say.
Well, look, I personally, if I had been writing that opinion piece, I wouldn't have used some of the language that she used. But it is also true to say that Tommy Robinson and his thugs were planning their protest, their counter-protest on Saturday, well before the Home Secretary published her article.
Well, here's what I don't understand. How come, after all the hullabaloo on Saturday, there was 145 arrests, but only 7 people charged? Why would you arrest someone and then not charge them? All very, very strange. And there's still rows about whether the protests on Armistice Day should have even gone ahead. So on Saturday, 300,000 people, it was some sight, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Marching through central London, calling for a ceasefire in Gaza.
But it wasn't without trouble.
Investigations into other offences, including anti-Semitic hate crime, continues.
Well, despite the political rows and protests, the nation remained focused on honouring our servicemen and women.
King Charles led the country in tribute to those who paid the ultimate sacrifice. Our royal correspondent Cameron Walker has this report.
Camaraderie, solidarity, and solemn remembrance. A chance to honour those who died for our freedoms, which for some included the freedom to protest. Many exercised that right on Saturday, much of it peaceful, but clashes broke out. Sunday, though, was a time for silent reflection. King Charles led the nation in tribute, laying a wreath at the cenotaph alongside his son, the Prince of Wales. The Duke of Edinburgh and the Princess Royal also paid their respects, and the Queen's equerry laid a wreath on her behalf. She, the Princess of Wales, and other members of the royal family watched on from the balconies of the Foreign Office. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer led political tributes, united as one to honour our fallen soldiers. Close to 10,000 former servicemen and women took part in the Veterans March Past, the royal salute taken by the Princess Royal on Horse Guards Parade. Philippa Rawlinson from the Royal British Legion explains what the royal family means to those marching.
We know there's a very close relationship between the whole of the royal household and the armed forces community, and it means a lot to the veterans to have a senior member of the royal family here with them today taking their salute. Makes them incredibly proud.
The work of our armed forces spreads far and wide. Not all of it glamorous or particularly exciting, but important work happens every day to keep Britain safe. RAF veteran Nikki Burdett suggests it's all about putting your country before yourself.
Veterans come in all shapes and sizes, and what we don't often see on the news is the work that the military people are doing in the background, and all of our security services actually. Just because you can't see it, it doesn't mean it's not happening, and it doesn't mean that people aren't putting their lives on the line every single day.
In bombarded French countryside in World War I, radiant poppies continued to thrive. A symbol of remembrance and hope for a peaceful future in an uncertain world. Cameron Walker, GB News.
I got James Heal in the studio. James is a political correspondent at The Spectator magazine. And James, you come from a right-wing perspective on a lot of things, but not as right as some of the right-wing people who are getting in touch with us today, who will not have Suella Braverman slighted in any way. Can we all begin to put this into perspective? I mean, we here as journalists have got, because there are some journalists on this station, of which we are two of them, and we have news bulletins in this programme which are regulated by the broadcasting regulator Ofcom, which we have to stay within rules for and against certain things. So we just can't give you your news, which is Suella Braverman should be made queen type thing. But what's your view on Suella Braverman? Well, from a right-wing perspective.
Well, no, I mean, when I talk about what MPs are saying, I mean, that's just trying to get a balance of, say, what the parliamentary party is reflecting. I think there's a hardcore of the party, maybe around sort of 30 or 40 MPs who really like her, who think that she's doing what she's meant to be doing, speaking honest
truth. Just explain, 30 or 40 MPs out of a majority
out of 350 or so. Okay. And then I would say there's probably maybe twice that who are really sort of hardcore against her and have really come to bemoan her interventions in politics, etc. And I think there's a balancing act to be struck. The difficulty is when we discuss Suella Braverman's future is that I think that her and Rishi Sunak agree on lots of things. It's about the emphasis and rhetoric around that. So when you're talking about things like, you know, the police, etc., you know, you can both disagree with what the Metropolitan Police are doing. The question is, do you come out as a senior government minister and say openly that the Met Police are biased? And
well, not just a senior government minister, I mean the Home Secretary.
Exactly, yeah, exactly.
Which, you know, if there is any role in a high state position, that is the one that actually has to try and be as balanced as possible when it comes to the police and to back the police, presumably.
Yeah, completely. And then, of course, you get other MPs who say, well, hang on a sec, I'm going to be standing at my Remembrance Sunday service alongside 7 police officers. You know, these guys put their life on the line. How can I turn around and say that to them? So, I mean, there is a real and genuine difference of opinion in the Parliamentary Party on all of this. The question is, at what point do you reach the threshold whereby it's enough to sack a government minister? You look 2 years ago, for instance, when Dominic Raab was demoted from the Foreign Office. That was after a huge Afghanistan debacle. And the question is, do all these kind of slights and this long-going war between Suella and Number 10, the Home Office, does that constitute enough to move her out of that brief? And that is a question I think the government whips have been asking and phoning around these past months.
I tell you, Michael Heseltine, former Deputy Prime Minister, I was listening to him on the radio this morning, and he would sack her.
Yep.
Yeah. But does he represent the left of the party, or?
I would say so. I think that Michael Heseltine's interventions are quite a frequent thing, and that he represents a strand of conservatism that perhaps isn't as prevalent in the mainstream as it once was. Pro-Europeanism, One Nation Toryism. I think the party has shifted in terms of the balance towards
Would Theresa May have sacked her?
I mean, you know, it's potential, possibly, of course, but then she was, you know, pretty weak herself for a long time as Prime Minister. So it's, I think that, you know, I think probably Theresa May's politics are certainly very different from Suella Braverman's as Home Secretary. The question is, it's always a balancing act in terms of keeping the coalition together on the road.
Yes, nice. So, OK, look into your crystal ball, James, here, and we see Braverman's, you know, she's chanced her arm. She's pushed it as far as she can push it. Does she begin to pull her horns in now, visibly so, or does she go for broke?
Well, if you look at what she tweeted last night, she made a series of statements which suggested that she wanted to be at the centre of government in terms of trying to deal with the fallout from these issues. So there's a whole new host of policies announced in The Sun today, talking about things that they want to do to clamp down on protest, etc., which would suggest that, you know, she would want to remain in the tent for now. But of course, you know, other people are going to be deciding the reshuffle, Number 10's opinions, etc. That's coming up, and of course we've got the Rwanda's decision on Wednesday. And so talking to some MPs, they're thinking, well, you know, if she's going to resign, Wednesday will be the chance to go for it, and then make a big campaign on the backbenches for pulling out the ECHR in terms of the referendum.
But James, the reason why everyone's sort of got at fever pitch today is there's this thing called the Whitehall Communications Grid, which every day has the government's plans for whatever they're wanting to talk about, and it's blank for today. So, you know, whilst you make a lot of sense talking about it possibly being Wednesday with this Rwanda thing, this is why everyone's saying maybe it could be this morning.
Yeah, it could be today, and I suppose the argument would go, move it now, so that means that by Wednesday, whatever happens, you win or you lose the decision, the sort of show will have moved on from whatever happens with Suella Braverman, the Home Secretary, right there. There's been a real desire to have a reshuffle for a long time in Number 10. They want to bring some of those rising stars up from the 2019 intake.
Such as?
Laura Trott, Laura Farris, for instance, Victoria Atkins.
Claire Coutinho.
Claire Coutinho's she's already got Energy Secretary. So they want to put a few of their people in positions and just give the government more of a shake-up. Because, of course, when Rishi Sunak came in, he had to give people like Suella Braverman jobs last October. He wants to make it more about his team heading into that election with good communicators, people saying the things he wants to talk about.
OK, James, thank you very much indeed. Really appreciate your right-wing take there, which is...
I thought that was a very balanced view.
That's what I thought. So just anyway, it's not just putting both sides of the coin there from James. Appreciate that.
We're going to focus on the weather now. Both Eamonn and I experienced difficult driving conditions, I think it's fair to say, this morning. Lots of rain, torrential, frankly, is the best word I can think of, but also lots of residual rain from the high water table. So
from a little storm called Debbie. Hello, Debbie.
D-E-B-I.
Debbie. Yes, not even D-B-B-I-E or D-D-B-B-Y, but D-E-B-I. What a lot of nonsense.
This really gets on your thruppeny bits.
Just get on my thruppeny bits, this does. Anyway, there's a storm, and it's bringing a lot of rain. And if you look out your window today, there's puddles everywhere. OK, let's go to our meteorologist, Jim Dale, on this one. Jim, tell us, what's it like out there?
It's rough. You've already said it. It's one of those awful autumn mornings. Storm Debbie, or Storm Braverman, we might say. She's crossing the country at the moment. The centre of it is actually over Northern Ireland, just to the south of Northern Ireland at this moment in time, and it's going to work its way through Northern England into the North Sea later this afternoon. But yeah, wet and windy. You're right about the puddles, and it's been raining in the overnight, so water tables at their height at this moment in time. River levels quite high as well, so it's definitely steady as you go.
And is this normal for this time of year? I mean, we talk about autumnal storms and low-pressure systems, etc. But obviously the climate change conversation always comes up. So I have to ask you that question. Is it being exacerbated by climate change?
Isabel, it's a good question, because it's a relevant question. Look, I'm going to say to you, yeah, you're dead normal. At this time of year, October, November time, we normally see these sort of storms in the jet stream, which is exactly what we've got. What climate change does, it doesn't make the storm per se in any shape or form. So we would have got this anyway. It tends to add a topping to it, an added value, if you like, maybe more in the way of rainfall totals, and also potentially in terms of adding to the mile per hour that we'll see this morning in terms of 60, 70 miles an hour across Northern England in particular, Northern England, North Wales, Southwest Scotland. I think that's the area to be concerned about, the winds, so very gusty and what have you. But I think it goes in line with what we would normally expect, only we've had a few storms before then, and as you can see by the pictures you're showing from previous, this is just topping up the bathwater, if you like.
And there's more to come later on in the week before finally some good news next week.
Yeah, maybe me and Eamonn can go storm chasing one day rather than sitting in your studio, Eamonn. And
I'd love to do that. I'd love to do that. Yeah, that would be great, mate.
Why not? Isabel in the studio, me and you out there.
I've done enough storm chasing in my time. It's Eamonn's turn to put the waterproofs on.
Yeah. Thanks very much.
In the week. Storm. It may not turn into a storm, but there's another one coming Thursday time.
Well, certainly life's predictable, if nothing else. Thank you very much indeed, mate.
Thanks,
appreciate
Jim.
it. Thank you. And to all the utility companies out there who are going to have hose restrictions within no time in December or whatever it is, just dig some holes and catch some water. Cannot.
Have you got a water butt?
Yeah. All our garden's quite green because everything is fed by recycled water.
Perfect.
Everything.
Essential.
Yeah. Good day for a funeral, I suppose you could say.
Yeah,
with
I think
rain.
that's right.
Remember, my father died. It was the wettest day. It was a day like today. It really
Quite
was.
right.
And today's the funeral of footballing legend Sir Bobby Charlton.
Yeah, the procession will make its way past Old Trafford, home, of course, to Manchester United, and then through the city up to Manchester Cathedral.
Have you ever been to Old Trafford?
No. I've been to the Media Village, which is near Old Trafford. I could see it.
Could see it.
I've only been inside one football stadium in my entire life.
Which was?
Goodison Park.
Oh, good one to be inside as well.
Yeah.
Why were you there?
I had a boyfriend who was an Everton supporter. He dragged me.
Right, yeah. Well, Sir Bobby's service is expected to be attended by around 1,000 people, but then you've got outside those who'll pay their respects out on the streets. Associate Sports Features Editor for The Sun. We go to Rob Mall, who will talk to us today. Not a great day for a funeral, though, is it, Rob, to be standing out in the streets? And I hope it doesn't affect the turnout.
I don't think so, Eamon. I think there'll be tens of thousands of fans from both sides of the divide, red and blue, that will come out today to pay their respects to not only a fantastic Manchester United player, a key figure in their history when he retired, but also arguably England's greatest ever footballer. This is someone that won the World Cup.
I know you'll say that, and there'll be a whole generation, 2 generations of people who won't really get what, this man with this comb over was the best England footballer that there's ever been. Explain what you mean by that, or is there, Rob, a modern day equivalent that people could relate to? Would they have made another Bobby Charlton?
Well, I'd ask some of your readers, the younger ones, to look on YouTube at those goals he scored in the semi-final against Portugal. That will certainly maybe give that basis of that evidence. I mean, this is a guy that was England's record goal scorer until he was overtaken by Wayne Rooney a couple of years ago. This was someone who played more matches for Manchester United until Ryan Giggs overtook him about a decade ago. Not only the fact that he won the trophies for Manchester United, the European Cup in 1968, the World Cup, the fact he'd lived and survived the Munich air crash and had to play his entire career with the knowledge that teammates had died on that airstrip in Germany. And just the fact that he was a magical player, obviously long before my time, I'm too young to have watched him, but talking to journalists, colleagues of mine that were around in the 60s, just a magnificent player, could strike the ball beautifully with both feet, and was a midfielder, of course, and scored all those goals from the midfield position.
It's funny that you
Banks. I mean, you could make an argument for it.
You talked about the record goal scoring and taken over by Wayne Rooney. Wayne Rooney is a player who, whose life has been surrounded in controversy on and off the pitch as well. But I can't think of controversy associated with Bobby Charlton. What was the difference? How was he able to be so good, so strong? I mean, he certainly wasn't a shrinking violet. I mean, he was a robust player. But how did he steer clear of controversy?
Well, I mean, I think we're talking about something 40, 50 years ago when he was playing. And of course, there wasn't the social media, the camera phone. So it's very difficult to say what was going on behind the scenes. But Bobby Charlton probably was from very humble beginnings, wasn't he, in Northumberland, Ashington. Obviously, he played with his brother, Jackie. Those two fell out for a bit at some stage, their respective wives and families. But to say there was any controversy, I mean, he was just a footballer. He was an ordinary working man, wasn't he, basically? In those days, the wage discrepancy between him and the common man, the guys that would work in the factories during the week, there just wasn't that massive gap. But obviously, when he did retire from football, he had a very brief spell as a player manager of Preston. That didn't quite work out. And then he was connected with Manchester United, Old Trafford, your club, Eamonn. And, he played a key role. We should sort of strengthen the legacy that he had. Had he not stuck by Alex Ferguson in the late 1980s and early 90s, when Fergie was going through those difficult periods, long before he actually won that first Premier League title, the one of 13, it could have been a really different football landscape had Bobby Charlton not been a key ally for Sir Alex Ferguson in those difficult years. So, huge legacy both on the pitch and off it.
Yeah, and talking about off the pitch, I mean, not only was he, part of Manchester United's football board, but he was quite a good businessman as well. I mean, he was one of the first players, if not the first, to introduce these summer soccer schools that kids could sign up to.
That's correct. And of course, one of the most famous graduates was David Robert Beckham, who was named after Bobby Charlton by his dad because he had that affiliation with the club and with Charlton. So you're right, it encouraged the next youngsters to come through. So, yeah, I mean, as I say, and he was always a figure at Old Trafford, wasn't he? He was always someone that you'd watch Match of the Day and he would be on there in the crowd watching. And and when he died last month at the age of 86, a lot of players came out from the last 20, 30 years and said that Bobby was always in the dressing room post-match. Would always give a handshake and a smile and a cuddle and would never really critique them. He was never one that would go out in front of the media and criticise the Manchester United players, but he illustrated and strengthened what it meant to be a Manchester United player, which was to play with dignity and to lose with class. And I think that sort of shines through. And I think that's why, despite the weather, despite the storm, I think thousands of people are going to come out and pay their respects to him.
In the mid-'80s, Rob, I did a report on his soccer school. And as part of this, I went in goals against Bobby outside. And I made a big mistake. I made a mistake of trying to stop a shot that he fired. I did stop the shot. When I say I stopped it, it hit my arm, probably broke my arm then, and the ball dribbled into the back of the net. I have never felt anything with the force of that in my life. So how he did that, how he got up that power and did it consistently, an amazing player. Didn't look for many of the applause and credits. And part of the Holy Trinity, of course, let's not forget that. You said you didn't see him. I was lucky enough to see Best Law and Charlton all play together against Newcastle United. I just think the problem was I didn't realise what I was watching at the time, but amazing.
Yeah, as you say, I mean, he built that, well, he was involved in that club from the ashes of the Munich air disaster. And then 10 years later, as you say, Dennis Law, George Best, Bobby Charlton, his holy trinity of players that became the first English club to win the European Cup. They beat Benfica 4-1 at Wembley. So it sort of capped that decade of chasing that European glory. One of the first teams in Europe, of course, I think Wolves might have been, but Man United sort of solidified that European campaign in the 1950s with the Busby Babes. So, you know, a tremendous legacy, a tremendous life. One of the immortals, of course, and it is quite sad that of that 1966 World Cup starting 11, only Geoff Hurst survives now, and we've lost 10 of the 11, and it's just so sad. And look, we have to pay our respects to what he left and the legacy that he has left behind.
Well, appreciate it. Rob is the Associate Sports Features Editor with The Sun. Thanks, Rob. So Bobby Charlton's funeral today. I led George Best to rest.
Aww.
I conducted the funeral. I was asked by the family to officiate at the ceremony in front of 100,000 people. And it was a rainy day like this. It was a horrendously rainy day.
It's befitting, this weather, for a funeral. I think it's like the world is crying.
Yeah.
You'd have made a lovely priest. Or maybe not.
I would have, bless
Maybe
you.
you're
like
too
that.
wicked
Bless
to
you.
be a priest. Listen, we're talking about all the rain. There's lots of it out there this morning. It's going to be a tricky commute for many. Here's Jonathan Vaughtry with all the all-important details.
Hello there, good morning. I'm Jonathan Vaughtry here with your GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. Storm Debbie, named by Met Éireann, the Irish Weather Service, is providing a very unsettled start to this new working week. It has significantly deepened overnight, and those isobars are really squeezing together to provide some very strong gusts of wind, up to 80 miles an hour along coastal areas of the Irish Sea and over the Pennines, but even other inland areas of northern England and North Wales could see gusts of 60 to 65 miles an hour. So please do take care over the course of today, because some disruption is possible from those strong winds, but also the heavy rain as well across Northern Ireland, Northern England, also a focus for eastern Scotland during the afternoon as well. Southern areas of England and Wales seeing some drier, brighter interludes, perhaps into the far south of Northern Ireland later on as well, but it is still going to be a very blustery day here nonetheless, so that will take the edge off the feel of things, even if the thermometer does say 15 or 16 degrees Celsius. During this evening and overnight, Storm Debbie will eventually clear its way off into the North Sea, so most of the rainfall taking it away with it, but we'll see some blustery showers pushing their way in from the west as we head into the second half of the night. With all of that around and still quite a breeze in place, we're not expecting it to turn too chilly overnight, generally temperatures holding around 6 to 10 degrees Celsius. Tuesday then sees a day of showers across all areas of the UK. Some of those could be heavy at times, with some hail and thunderstorms in the mixture as well. Quite a lot of clouds still in between those showers for northern England up into Scotland, but perhaps parts of Northern Ireland, Wales and central southern areas of England seeing some sunny spells in there as well. But some further wet and windy weather on the cards for the rest of the week. Bye-bye.
Right, still to come, lots of you have strong views on Suella Braverman. Stay with us for this next bit, you'll enjoy it. We are debating whether or not the Supreme Court decision on Wednesday on the Rwanda migrant plan could change her position as Home Secretary. Stay tuned for that after this.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Ah!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamonn.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us. From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at Drive Time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christys, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Now, it's a really big week for Suella Braverman, the Home Secretary. This week, the Supreme Court is set to rule on whether the government's plan to deport migrants to Rwanda is lawful. And that's as the Prime Minister's facing increased pressure to sack Suella Braverman, who's been at the centre of controversy this week over her comments about the pro-Palestine protests. But if she survives a potential cabinet reshuffle expected imminently, should she go if the Rwanda migrant plan is deemed unlawful? Well, the former UKIP Deputy Chair, Suzanne Evans, joins us now to debate this, along with the sociologist and academic Lisa Mackenzie. A very good morning to you both. We've heard a lot of the arguments this morning about why Suella Braverman should go. So let's start with you, Suzanne Evans, about why you believe she should stay in post.
The Rwanda decision, the Rwanda policy, isn't just Suella Braverman's making. It's, in Cabinet, government has a collective responsibility. And I think to blame Suella Braverman for this would be completely unfair. As I say, it's not just her decision. She's taken advice from the Attorney General, she's taken advice from government lawyers, she's taken advice from civil servants who've all told her that this is lawful. And this has been the government's line again and again, that the deportations to Rwanda, so asylum seekers can have their claims processed there, are lawful. Now, so far, judges have disagreed. Of course, also last June, when the first flight was supposed to be taking off, the European Court of Human Rights also disagreed and put a stop to that flight. So it's not as though she is somebody who's on her own pushing this through. I think it has been very much a flagship policy for her. It's one that she's clearly backed and one that she's been trying to push through. But it does seem slightly unfair that, as I say, as this is a collective decision, that she should be the one that has to fall on her sword if it all falls flat through reasons for which she has absolutely no control. She can't control the Supreme Court. Our judges are rightly independent, and she can't control the European Court of Human Rights.
OK, well, let's see what Lisa Mackenzie makes of that. It's not all Suella Braverman's fault if this is an unsuccessful Supreme Court ruling on Wednesday.
No, it's not all of Suella Braverman's fault, but this is one of her, she's become the poster woman for these sort of right-wing, and I would say they're quite extreme, actually, these extreme right-wing policies. Over the last couple of weeks, and I know that we've talked about it on this programme many, many times, is Suella Braverman as sort of pushing herself forward as this sort of champion of the right. And out in the country, people are hearing that. The hate marches last week, the lifestyle of homeless people to live in tents. And then this week, there is a serious challenge, I suppose, to Suella Braverman's plan as Home Secretary. And I think if she loses this, Rishi Sunak although I think he's reluctant to sack her, I think he's under pressure to actually show that he's a leader. And at the moment, Suella Braverman is just running, she's running rings around him, actually.
Well, let's see what Suzanne makes of that. I mean, do you accept that some of her language, her rhetoric is extreme, as Lisa would have it? I mean, certainly if you read our GB News inbox this morning, people are saying Suella Braverman's not extreme. She's just voicing the opinions of ordinary working class people. You may take that view, but do you also accept that a lot of what she says is divisive because a huge number of people also disagree and it ends up creating heightened tensions?
Well, I think it's interesting that Lisa uses the language of the so-called far right. Very often, I think what is far right depends on what your own political situation is. And if you're kind of a centre right, then far right is going to mean something very different to something if you're on the left wing of politics. So I think what she's doing is tapping into a real sense of desperation, almost. I mean, she said herself, you know, the small boats coming over are an unsustainable problem that needs to be fixed. And people try and make out that the UK is the nasty outlier here. That simply isn't true. We know that other countries, including Denmark, Greece and Austria, are trying to get the European Union to adopt a much tougher and more innovative approach on this issue. And in fact, they're urging the European Union to look at some kind of Rwanda-type scheme where people can be processed and have their asylum processes processed offshore. So I don't think we're the nasty right-wingers here. I think that's slightly misleading when you've got other European countries who are interested in recreating this kind of scheme. Now, of course, as I said before, I mentioned the European Court of Human Rights. Ultimately, if they block this decision, then everyone else in Europe knows they're going to block anything similar for them too. So I think it comes down ultimately to the kind of nuclear option, if you like, as to whether or not the government is prepared to remove ourselves from the European Court of Human Rights and run for the next general election on that policy. Now, I think among many of the Conservative Party members, that would actually be very popular because we have seen so many instances where our membership of the European Court of Human Rights has actually led to compromises in our own safety. So we know, for instance, that there have been people who had rejected asylum claims who've then gone on to commit crimes in this country. I'm thinking about the man that let the bombs off in Liverpool. I'm thinking about one of the London Bridge attackers was a failed asylum seeker. There are plenty of stories like this.
And Suzanne, because we're running out of time, terribly sorry to interrupt you. I really want to let Lisa have a final chance to say something before we have to wrap the whole section. But just to summarise there, as Suzanne was saying, she's not an extremist. She's a trailblazer.
Look, her language is extreme. Her language is definitely extreme. I'm working class, and I'm actually desperate as well. You know, but what I'm desperate for is to have a government and have ministers that are talking to working class people's situations, which is fear of homelessness, high prices for food, afraid to put their heating on. And quite frankly, you know, the government sort of focus on migration and immigration and what are they going to do about that. I mean, to start with, they are failing at all of those things. So, you know, it's not great to hang your hat on a policy and then it fails on Wednesday, you know, with the background that's happened over the last 2 weeks. I think she will probably go.
Well, it all remains to be seen. Could be today, could be Wednesday, might not happen at all. Lisa Mackenzie, Suzanne Evans, really good to talk to you both this morning. Thanks very much indeed for your time.
Thank you.
Got Paul Coyte with me. Now, just looking at the Premier League, Manchester City, point ahead. Then comes Liverpool, Arsenal, Spurs and Villa. Those are the top five. Manchester United coming in sixth, 4 points behind Villa. How did we get to that stage over the weekend?
I'll tell you how we did. Chelsea 4, Manchester City 4. I mean, what a game!
What a game!
What a
game.
ding dong!
Yeah.
Cole Palmer is the talk at the moment. Cole Palmer scored a penalty in the 95th minute for Chelsea. I mean, they're 21 years old. That's when you know you've got to have a very old head on young young shoulders, but he's 21, 15 years he spent at Manchester City, and since he's been at Chelsea, 4 goals, 2 assists in 9 games, cost £42 million, and it's worked out very well for him. It's a very difficult thing for him to actually leave to go to Chelsea. I mean, how do you... So he didn't really celebrate. Where do you stand on the celebratory thing? So if you leave a club and go and play for somewhere else...
Yeah, well, if there's a club in your heart or you're on loan or whatever it is, you can't celebrate.
Yeah. Just a little... He gave something, but I tell you what was interesting is that Mauricio Pochettino did say originally, I think this is going to work, but it'll take time. And at the end of the game, Kyle Walker plays for Manchester City, big hub with Mauricio Pochettino because he was his manager at Spurs. And I spoke to Kyle Walker quite a few years ago when Pochettino first moved there, and he said, you know what? We just can't get it at the moment. It's taking time for us to try and get used to what Pochettino wants. We're not quite there. We're trying our hardest. Hopefully it's going to happen. And I think this is what's happening with them at Chelsea. It's just taking time to get used to it, but they're going to be fine.
Good win for Liverpool and Anfield against Brentford.
Absolutely. Liverpool 3, Brentford 0. Jurgen Klopp said about Brentford, he said, it's more than 20 years ago when I started my career, I wanted to create a team that nobody wants to play against, and we face that team today. It's crazy. 6 corners in a row. And I thought, oh, God, I don't know whether he's patronising Brentford or he's actually serious about it, but he was very complimentary about them. But he only does that, he noticed, when they win. He wouldn't say if they were, oh, they were such a great side, he'd be moaning about VAR or something. West Ham scored 3 against Forest, Aston Villa 3, Fulham 1. Another win at home, 13 straight now.
And we lay to rest one of the game's greats today, Sir Bobby Charlton.
Well, if not the greatest, of course, Bobby Charlton. I've got a few bits and pieces I thought you might want to see, because Bobby Charlton being the first great footballing superstar, a lot of products that came out, you know, with his name attached. Let's try this one first. This is Kasdan Soccer. I don't know if you will remember this. This was a board game back in the 1960s, which I'm hoping we're going to see, which was... There we are, look at that.
Don't know that. So that's a big version of Subbuteo.
It's a bit like that. The twisty things. There he is, Bobby, in his cardigan, looking very nice.
So you had the dials beside your goals there at each corner
and they would
flag.
spin. They would spin.
Right, so it's like... shove football, what's it called? Whatever,
But it's like played by Bobby Charlton. Let's try the next one. How about this one? This came out... See, this shows how important Bobby Charlton was even back in 1985, although he'd retired 12 years earlier. This was a video game that came out. Now, this is going to look really old-fashioned. This is from... Look at that. See, this was like the cutting edge of 1985.
And they had video games in 1985.
They did, but it didn't really do much. The Bobby Charlton Soccer.
Gosh, OK, right.
How about some Bobby Charlton football boots? You fancy some Bobby Charlton football boots? Let's have a look at these. From 1960, the Bobby Charlton boots, and it advertised... Look at that. The Bobby Charlton moulded... Look at those boots.
They're like rugby boots.
God, dear. Fancy playing football in those.
Moulded soles.
But notice it says all white, sole and studs. Oh. Very impressive.
Wonder would the studs have screwed in?
I think they're probably hammered in.
I wouldn't like to have been kicked by them anyway.
I say that again.
Paul, thanks very much.
I'm wearing those,
and we'll have more on the funeral route for Sir Bobby later on in the programme. Thank you very much indeed.
Now, we're asking this morning, are they impartial? The Met Police are making headlines again as 2 officers have posed with a child at a pro-Palestine march. We'll be discussing that and the rest of the day's news in Headline Makers next.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle. Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's my new teeth. It's your new teeth.
I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate. Both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Let's go through the newspapers and other things making the news today. We've got Dawn Neeson and we've got the political commentator Alex Armstrong. What's that blooming show on every day called?
Pointless.
Pointless. It is
oh, yeah.
the most pointless programme. He's Alex Armstrong too, isn't he?
Yeah, well, I say I'm the more pointless version.
Very good. Should we start with you, Alex?
Yes.
And there's a viral picture of a police officer posing with a child protester who's dressed up in full pro-Palestine garb. Yeah. What do we make of this?
Well, I mean, obviously, online there's a big division over whether the outfit was appropriate for the young child. Now,
So who posted the picture?
I don't know, actually. I'm really not sure who posted it.
Was it the police or was it the family?
It was a family member or someone at the protest by the looks of the caption. The big controversy around this is actually whether the police should have been posing with the child at all, considering recently even Sewell had come out and said that there's bias in the police force.
Yeah.
Some people online are saying, well, if the child was dressed in something like far-right outfit, like a KKK outfit, would that be acceptable? Would the police stand with that child? That's the conversation that's happening online. So it's a very, very difficult one. The Met Police responded and said, look, we tried to engage with communities. What is interesting is there's a follow-up story to this where an anonymous police officer who wrote on the Mail Online said that, there is bias in the police force and this is a result of many years of wokery. He says he's an officer on the front line and said it's embedded in the police force from the bottom up.
Is it embedded with wokery or is it found to be racist, misogynistic and homophobic? Can't be both, surely.
It's so divisive at the moment, isn't it? I mean, whether or not you think that the photo is inappropriate, the question's really coming around whether the police should be engaging with communities, and you know the big question around whether they should have been taking the knee in BLM marches.
Well, that's not been engaged with communities. That's been engaged with someone who has got a bias or a stance on something, and the officers should have the wit to know when to stand back or when to put their arm around someone who's got a. You could say to the child, "I can have my photograph taken with you, but not while you're carrying that flag."
Absolutely, yeah. And this is what's incensed people, because I think what people are saying here is there's one rule for some and another for others, and that's the conversation that's been happening here with this anonymous police officer as well. He's saying, well, you weren't allowed to go to a park during COVID. There's mass amounts of people allowed to protest in Trafalgar Square.
I think the problem here is the police, in particular the Mayor, are so terrified of being accused of racism that they do. I think they do. I think the one thing I do agree with Sir Weller with is that there is a difference between how groups of people are policed, and I think they do tiptoe around some organisations which are incredibly volatile, and I think the racism card can easily be played. And that little, I think it's a little boy, isn't it? That little boy, let's be honest, he was dressed almost like a Hamas terrorist. It wasn't just a Palestinian national dress, by the way. I mean, lots of the Hamas terrorists that went into Israel on October the 7th were dressed in that way.
Yeah.
The little boy, he doesn't know what he's doing. He's holding a flag, simply saying, you know, look after the children.
Well, I think those officers should have more wit. I mean, if that was me, I mean, as someone in the public eye, and I'm sure I speak for you as well, Isabel, if someone walked up to you and said, can I have a picture taken with you? You'd say, no, not while you're wearing that, son. Take that scarf off and put that flag down, and then we'll do a picture. And if not, we don't do a picture. And if you're in the public eye, you would probably say that.
I think it's quite simple. Why are police posing for photographs at all? At all?
Yes, no,
but I would go a step further. I don't understand why they have to constantly engage with every awareness month and everything. It gets to a point where you start to say that I'm taking a side on this.
Yeah.
And the Met Police should not be engaging in these things. They should be seen as a
But, Alex, that is society. I have this gripe about football. I have all my troubles during the week and everything, and then I go to a match and I think, 90 minutes, we have nothing to worry about. And then, as sure as heck, at the start of every game, and Dawn's a football fan, she'll know what I'm talking about, there are players being made to stand or salute or wear a black armband for something, whatever. And you're saying, it's just football. It's not, let's just get on with it and play football.
I don't want a political lecture. I just want to watch a football match, and a decent one. But it's interesting you bring up football, because I not so much recently, but I used to travel to lots of away games with West Ham, and we were treated as groups of fans walking from a station to an away ground far more heavy-handed than any of the police officers were policing this march, where people were a minority, but people were being racist and banishing racist slogans. And they would never, ever pose with me while I'm trying to walk down the road as a West Ham fan. Can I have a picture? No.
Yeah, and it wasn't just
probably try and nick me.
And it wasn't just this isolated photo. There's quite a few photos going around of police, marching with some of the protesters and posing with them and sort of going thumbs up in the picture. It just should be taken out of the police force. Why have the Met Police allowed this to fester inside them? This nonsense.
True. But I remember the day of my OBE, and we were coming up to Buckingham Palace, and I don't know how it came about, but my daughter ended up wearing a police officer's helmet, and me standing beside a police officer giving me their helmet as well. And they engaged on our day, and it made our day very lovely.
Actually, now I've said why police haven't taken pictures. You made me do similar at Ascot last summer, where there was about a group of 20 police officers, and I went in, took my hat off, swapped hats. I think you probably stitched your daughter up there.
That was to save me from arrest. That was probably
so I did pose with about 20 officers going, "Oh, we're going to arrest me." Ho, ho, ho.
I do think your story there, Eamonn, is perfectly acceptable. I don't think anyone's going to, no one's going to turn a blind eye to it and go, wow, that shouldn't have happened. I think it's just when the political lines, you get close to those divisive lines where people start to go, should this be allowed?
I suppose there would be people who'd say he's just a kid and he doesn't know what he's wearing. She's just posing with a kid.
Of course, absolutely.
And she looks like
what sort of parent dresses their kid up like that?
Maybe a Palestinian parent. Who may have family in Palestine.
But that's not Palestine national outfit, that's more Hamas. And there is a difference. But, I mean, just the final thing on this is they weren't posing for happy snaps with the Sarah Everard vigil people, were they?
Well, that's true. That is very true. Dawn, let's talk about...
let's talk about the
go on
UFOs
then.
before we run out of time, because Isabel will dismiss this as nonsense. Right, so here we have it. We have a Ryanair jet, and it climbs to an altitude of 4,000 feet. It's travelling at 230 miles per hour. And Dawn, what happens next?
Well, evidently, the pilot says they encounter a black object at 4,000 feet, and this has been on the log now. Pilot's object described as dark, which passed within 20 metres, and they are saying it's a UFO. Well, it's a UFO because it is an unidentified flying object, but that's what UFO means. But everyone assumes it is some sort of spaceship.
Spacecraft.
But Isabel's giving me that look.
Well, no,
Eamonn,
apparently
Isabel's
they
giving me
think
the
it was probably a drone.
Yeah, but it still qualifies as a UFO.
But it's not an alien, which is what you would like
You don't
to
know.
believe.
You have no idea if it's an alien drone, or an alien life form.
The other story I
any-
heard this morning, apparently some astronauts up in space were out doing some repair on, I guess, the ISS, International Space Station, and they dropped it. So coming down from space, as we speak, is a tool bag with spanners. So maybe that's what happened.
Well, of course it will come down from
Isabel.
space. It'll burn up in the atmosphere. And everything's weightless in space. So well, of course.
I didn't realise.
This is just banter, by the way. Okay? It's not bullying, just banter.
No, my point is, Isabel has a closed, warped mind against alien intelligence.
It's not
alien intelligence out there, and I happen to believe in alien intelligence.
The truth is, Eamonn has a deluded conspiracy.
Well, look, I'm going to defend Eamonn here. I think, with the universe being so much larger than we can possibly comprehend, if there's not life out there, we might be in very serious trouble. So in some part of me does hope that they're aliens, because if they are, they seem relatively peaceful.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't like to think that humanity's alone in the world of consciousness in the universe.
Let's just hope when they land to take over, they are more intelligent than us, which isn't difficult, and the police happily pose for pictures.
Yeah, fair enough.
So if you want a well-paid job, Dawn,
oh yes,
and you go to university, what sort of degree should you take?
Well, evidently, a Mickey Mouse degree. I mean, sort of like literally nappy-changing type degrees. It's not literally nappy-changing. I mean, it's computer graphics, vision and games. I mean, it's... The point with this story, right, is they're not Mickey Mouse degrees. They are not the classic degrees that we think of, like history, English, maths, etc. They are possibly the degrees that you will need for future employment. They're more high-tech, more digital, more online stuff. So they're not necessarily Mickey Mouse degrees. But evidently, if you take these sort of degree courses now, you end up earning more money than those taking what we consider the classical degrees.
So, yeah, you could study classics at Oxford and be a complete boffin.
Yes.
And be out-earned, in fact, by somebody who studied not nappy-changing, but...
Yeah, but it's computer graphics, visions, games. And there's not a lot in it. I mean, it's £2,000.
Yeah. Can I just add, as someone who hires people regularly, we don't really care about where your degree's from anymore. We just want to know if you're competent.
Yeah.
I think this sort of snobbiness around whether you went to Oxford or Cambridge is dying. No offence to everyone who did go.
Alex,
I do think that, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. I'm not saying that we could find great engineers who do just as good a job as someone from Oxford.
But I guess my argument about the great universities comes down to the same thing with, elite football training camps. Oh, it's elitist. You shouldn't just have camps for the best at football. It doesn't mean that all the other footballers are rubbish. Well, why can't you have the same when it comes to academics? And quite frankly, you do have brains that are different from other brains.
Yeah.
So, it's somehow elitism around academia.
Which university did you go to, Alex?
I went to Portsmouth University. So a polytechnic and one of these, and I think I've done relatively well.
I went to Bristol. It's not particularly prestigious. I mean, it's one of the good ones.
She boasts Bristol all the time.
Boast about Bristol.
What is it, Ivy League or Red? What is this? Where's Bristol?
It's a decent university.
I didn't go to university. No, I didn't go to university.
But all I'm saying is there's space for it. Why we want to turn our back on the old institutions?
Well, there's also an argument. These institutions have become quite woke with these sort of diversity quotas and everything now. Rather than picking the best people for the job, they're picking someone based on their skin colour or their race or whatever.
Yeah.
So,
interesting debate, guys. Interesting debate. Thank you very much indeed. Alex and Dawn will be back in 40 minutes' time. Right now, let's get an update. Are we doing weather? We are doing weather because it's a rainy day. We're not doing weather today. We should be doing weather. We're not doing weather. But anyway, let's go to the commercial break instead.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Ah!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamonn.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us. From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's at Drive Time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Hello there, very good morning to you. The time is 8 o'clock on Monday the 13th of November.
This is Breakfast with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster, and here's what's leading the news this morning.
Suella Braverman, speculation mounting over a potential cabinet reshuffle today that could see the Prime Minister oust the Home Secretary. Earlier we had the Defence Minister James Heappey asking whether she should go. Here's what he had to say.
I personally, if I had been writing that opinion piece, I wouldn't have used some of the language that she used. Whatever the Prime Minister has got planned for today has not been shared with me.
And the protest blame game, 145 arrested, 7 charged over Remembrance Weekend, with the vast majority being described as counter-protesters. Police are still on the hunt, though, for more demonstrators.
Sir Bobby Charlton. We take a look at his legacy as the former Manchester United and England footballer is laid to rest at Manchester Cathedral.
And Paul Coit will be here with all your sport.
Absolutely. We'll talk more about Sir Bobby and probably the greatest English player of all time. Quite a day for goals yesterday. I mean, we had 8 at Stamford Bridge. Liverpool scored 3, Aston Villa scored 3, West Ham scored 3. Some more about those games coming up as well.
You didn't score enough, though. On what day did you play Saturday, Spurs?
Oh, yeah.
We scored 1,
I know.
which turned out to be enough, but...
Well, that's all right. I'm just beginning to feel as if my Spurs buoyancy is It's on the wane a little bit. Yeah.
Momentum, you'll be
It
fine.
is. Do you think so? That's the problem. That's the problem, Isabel.
I tell you, there's a problem with the weather out there. Rain, rain, go to Spain, never show your face again, as Britain experiences relentless downpours. The forecast with Jonathan Vautry.
Storm Debbie is providing us with a very unsettled start to the new working week. Disruption from heavy rain and strong winds is possible during today, so do join me later for all the details.
What do you mean you never heard that before?
I've never heard that phrase. Rain, rain, go away, come back another day. I've heard, and
Yeah.
the rain,
Rain,
in Spain falls mainly on the plain. But I've never heard rain, rain, go away, go to Spain.
That's not what I said.
What did you say?
Rain, go to Spain and never show your face again.
I like it.
Yeah, maybe it's a wee Northern Ireland one.
Maybe. Had you heard that one before?
I've never heard that one before.
Well, I'm
it's
telling
My
you.
Fair Lady. I'm thinking, are you serious?
The rain in Spain stays mainly
on the plain.
Da, 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 da.
Where does the rain stay?
In Spain.
In Spain.
On the plain.
On a plane.
Anyway, if you've got any rain songs, are there any other rain songs?
Oh,
I
It's
can't
Raining
stand
Men.
the rain.
Oh, I love that one.
Against my window. Bring it back. Yeah, yeah.
Purple
Bring it
Rain.
back, sweet
Purple
man.
Rain.
Yeah.
It's Raining Men.
It's Raining Men.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's about it.
That's a summer rain.
Well,
done now.
what we're trying to say to you is it's pretty bad out there, and if you're going to face rush hour traffic this morning,
Be careful.
build in some time a lot of big puddles out there. GBViews at gbnews.com. If you can send us a picture of the biggest puddle that you can see, or you can tweet. Why do I make you laugh?
know.
Why do I make you laugh? Because
I don't know. Somehow you just make me think of rude things all the time.
rude things.
Yes, just
Why
a big
would-
puddle. I don't
Why
know.
would
why-
puddles and dampness and
I
wetness?
don't know.
Why?
You're making me think of like a dog in a puddle. I don't know. Stop looking at me.
Stop looking at me. There you are. Tweet at GB News.
On to more serious matters now, and a Conservative Party civil war is boiling over this morning. Lots of speculation mounting over the possibility of a cabinet reshuffle, one as soon as this morning, that could see Suella Braverman ousted as Home Secretary.
Well, it's believed Number 10 is still considering punishing Braverman over her newspaper article in which she accused police of a double standard for letting the pro-Palestinian march go ahead on Armistice Day.
She also called those protesting for a ceasefire in Gaza hate marchers. The Labour leader and the Mayor of London have demanded she's sacked.
Now, earlier we spoke to the Minister for the Armed Forces, that's James Heapy. Here's what he had to say.
Well, look, I personally, if I had been writing that opinion piece, I wouldn't have used some of the language that she used. But it is also true to say that Tommy Robinson and his thugs were planning their protest, their counter-protest on Saturday, well before the Home Secretary published her article.
And there's still a row about whether the protests on Armistice Day should have gone ahead.
Well, on Saturday, 300,000 people marched through central London in the sunshine, calling for a ceasefire in Gaza, but it wasn't without trouble.
Well, the Metropolitan Police said 145 people were arrested, and they say the vast majority were counter-protesters. 9 officers were injured. 7 men have been charged over disorder offences from the far right.
Investigations into other offences, including anti-Semitic hate crimes, continue. And despite the political rise in protests, the nation remained focused on honouring servicemen and women.
King Charles led the nation in tribute to those who paid the ultimate sacrifice to protect our freedom. Our royal correspondent Cameron Walker has this.
Camaraderie, solidarity, and solemn remembrance. A chance to honour those who died for our freedoms, which for some included the freedom to protest. Many exercised that right on Saturday, much of it peaceful, but clashes broke out. Sunday, though, was a time for silent reflection. King Charles led the nation in tribute, laying a wreath at the cenotaph alongside his son, the Prince of Wales. The Duke of Edinburgh and the Princess Royal also paid their respects. And the Queen's equerry laid a wreath on her behalf. She, the Princess of Wales, and other members of the royal family watched on from the balconies of the Foreign Office. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer led political tributes, united as one to honour our fallen soldiers. Close to 10,000 former servicemen and women took part in the Veterans March Past, the royal salute taken by the Princess Royal on Horse Guards Parade. Philippa Rawlinson from the Royal British Legion explains what the royal family means to those marching.
We know there's a very close relationship between the whole of the royal household and the armed forces community, and it means a lot to the veterans to have a senior member of the royal family here with them today taking their salute. Makes them incredibly proud.
The work of our armed forces spreads far and wide. Not all of it glamorous or particularly exciting, but important work happens every day to keep Britain safe. RAF veteran Nikki Burdett suggests it's all about putting your country before yourself.
Veterans come in all shapes and sizes, and what we don't often see on the news is the work that the military people are doing in the background, and all of our security services actually. Just because you can't see it, it doesn't mean it's not happening, and it doesn't mean that people aren't putting their lives on the line every single day.
In bombarded French countryside in World War I, radiant poppies continued to thrive. A symbol of remembrance and hope for a peaceful future in an uncertain world. Cameron Walker, GB News.
Well, let's bring in our political editor, Christopher Hope. Good morning to you, Chopper. Look, lots of speculation about this being a possible clear-out from Rishi Sunak. In the past, he's tended to veer away from cabinet reshuffles, but this so-called Whitehall communications grid is blank, which has got everyone very excited. Tell us more.
That's right, it's ominous. There's no word from Number 10 this morning when I've been in touch with them. The grid, the so-called news grid, when they plan announcements, is empty today and tomorrow. Wednesday is a huge day, don't forget. Immigration statistics, the Rwanda decision by the Supreme Court, a vote maybe, the SNP have a vote on a ceasefire in Gaza. A huge day on Wednesday, but the calm before the storm the next 2 days. That does give the PM, Mr Sunak, a window to try and reshuffle out, maybe Suella Braverman, but quite frankly, who does he replace her with? Already papers that the right are getting upset about her possible removal. She's seen as an important standard bearer for the right wing of the party. She sits there in a great office of state. That was a deal done when she backed Mr Sunak for the leadership in October last year. So very interesting times, but it's very important right now that the PM and his Home Secretary start working on the same page. As I say, Wednesday, a big day in Rwanda. Next week, we have net migration stats for the entire year. Both big issues, both that could go wrong for the Prime Minister if he hasn't got the Home Secretary on his side.
I mean, you're our political editor. She's not a stupid person. She is the Home Secretary. What's she playing at?
That's a great question, Eamonn. It looks like she's just trying to... some say she wants to get sacked, and I'm told that is not the case. But the way she came out last Thursday morning in the Time newspaper, the day after the PM met Mark Rowley and said that he would take all measures he could to keep the marches safe on Saturday, and then she went much further, accused the Met of playing favourites. It's not clear. I mean, no one is briefing on what she's up to and whether she wants to get fired or not. Looking into a possible leadership contest this time next year, maybe after a defeat at the general election. Could be the case. It just seems that she's trying to, I think, curry favour with the base, curry favour with the right. She sees rivals on the right of the party. Priti Patel making moves, doing work behind the scenes to shore up some support ahead of a possible campaign for the leadership of the party. Maybe she's doing that from inside the government, but it's a high-risk strategy, Eamonn.
If she does go, if she's sacked, or if indeed she quits this week, perhaps on Wednesday, if she's not successful with Rwanda, who might succeed her? I'd heard rumours of Michael Gove. I've since heard those dispelled. I'd say, Kemi Badenoch, possibly Robert Jenrick?
None of those three are probably right-wing enough for the group that wants a right-winger there. Maybe Kemi Badenoch passes that test, but there's concerns about her links to Michael Gove, who's not at all trusted by by the right of the party. Of course, if the PM dodges this, he'll seen as being dithery Rishi again, because he did a minor reshuffle in September. 4 people moved jobs when Ben Wallace left the government, and of course others were shuffled up. If he leaves it until, say, Wednesday and the government loses, and then he allows the Home Secretary to resign because maybe the government won't go ahead and pull out, or say they'll pull out from the European Court of Human Rights. So he gives her more opportunity to go on her own terms if he fails to act in the next 2 days. But we have not yet seen decisive Rishi. It may come today.
Thanks so much, Christopher. And I know you'll be the first to tell us if there's any movement coming out of Downing Street. Thank you.
It's obvious who's going to replace her. Grant Shapps. He replaces everybody, doesn't he?
Now, you know how you love to make a personal comment about people's height in government? The one thing I would say, I noticed yesterday in the lineup at the Cenotaph, actually Grant Shapps is quite small. I had no idea. I always find it fascinating when you meet these people in person. Jeremy Hunt, who I thought was quite small, is actually quite tall.
He's quite tall,
compared to all of them.
Yeah.
Anyway, I found that interesting.
Camera plays strange things. Some people would say I'm overweight, and yet you see me in real life. Incredible.
Well, yeah.
2 o'clock this afternoon in Manchester, the funeral of footballing legend Sir Bobby Charlton. Now, the procession is going to make its way past Old Trafford and then through the city and to Manchester Cathedral, where it's all going to happen. Paul Coyte is with me now in the studio, and we've got a very interesting man to talk to, Paul.
We have. We spoke to him just after Sir Bobby died. I mean, it's really interesting because not only being a legendary footballer himself, he was actually managed by Sir Bobby, because Bobby Charlton never truly made it as a manager. People say he was just too nice when he was manager of Preston North End, but certainly helped Mark Lawrenson's career, and the great Mark Lawrenson we've got with us. Morning, Mark.
Morning.
Great to see you again. Fair, though, do you think? Too nice?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, 100%. I mean, he was a gentleman, and he was a gentleman as well. So, yeah, most definitely. I remember I was in the home dressing room, just kind of looking after the players before they were going out to play, changing the studs and the boots and everything like that. And Bobby came in with a team sheet from the opposition, and obviously, you know, cue the silence in the dressing room. The boys were all waiting, and he was shaking. He was shaking, Paul. So, you know, just looking at the team they're about to play, and he kind of thought, maybe this is not the job for you. And obviously, it turned out that it wasn't.
But it's incredible. It's like this is what you wouldn't expect, and we often see this. This is a world superstar. This is a man that everybody revered as far as football was concerned around the world, but felt nervous about it. I mean, that can't really have instilled you with much confidence, Mark, though, that day. Did you win?
Well, I mean, that's just the way that it was. But he wasn't, you know, he just didn't like the job. He would rather train with the kids, which we were, the youth team, because he got great joy out of that, and there was no pressure. And I think he hated as well the fact that he had to leave players out on occasion, and he just didn't want that. He didn't want to have a row. It's like, you know how much Eamonn rows all the time. He's not one of those, is he?
But I'll tell you though, Mark, he wasn't a shrinking violet. He certainly wasn't a dirty player, but he wasn't a weak player on the pitch, was he?
No. Oh no, he was extremely strong. I mean, if you'd seen the size of his legs as well, Eamonn, he was like really, really strong, lower body. And I think he spent most of his life before he joined Man United just like hitting the ball against the wall in the back of the house, left foot and right foot. The great thing about him was, and we talk about him as one of the greats, and that, you know, absolutely 100% true, it was that you didn't know if he was right-footed or left-footed because he was that good off either foot.
Yeah, he could hit with both. Let me ask you this. If you were to look for a modern-day comparison, when I say that, I mean in the last 30 years or so in the game, was there another player that you could compare him to? I mean, when you look at goal-scoring records, him and Wayne Rooney, very similar from that point of view, but different temperaments.
No. Yeah, different. No, Bobby was an absolute one-off. You know, we've all seen those goals that he scored from outside the box, all absolutely brilliant. But he was also, you know, if you remember in the World Cup final, he was asked to mark Beckenbauer, and also if you remember, Beckenbauer did very, very little in that final as well. So No, there's no comparison. It's a bit like Pele. Was there a comparison to Pele? No, not for me. I mean, Pele and Bobby Charlton, the two best players I've ever seen, and that includes Messi. And, well, I'm not even going down the Ronaldo route, but Bobby was just an absolute superstar.
On a personal note, though, Mark, he had a lot to do with your career, didn't he, right at the very beginning?
Yeah, well, I'd just taken my O-levels, so I was about to start my A-levels at Catholic Grammar School, and I'd been training on a regular basis at Preston, and he came to me and he said, look, we want to give you a contract, but we think you need to come now, otherwise you'll miss the boat. So I said, well, I'm due to do my A-levels, and my mum wants me to do my A-levels. He went, right, don't worry. He said, I'll ring your headmaster at school. So I said, okay. So he rang the headmaster. The headmaster, my school was like, we were taught by Jesuit priests. So he rang the headmaster, and I'm pretty sure the headmaster had absolutely no idea who Bobby Charlton was.
I can't
believe the only person on the planet who didn't know. And he had a conversation with him and said, can you release him and all those kind of things. And the headmaster said, yeah. He said he can still take his A-levels, in a different way. And so Bobby rang me, and he said to me, I've sorted the headmaster out. I said, what about my mother? He said, oh, leave it with me. Anyway, I got a message about half an hour later, and he said, your mother's sorted. And what it was my stepfather was a director at Preston, and obviously my mum came to the game, and she used to sit with Norma Charlton at the games at two of them, and have a little G&T and all those kind of things. So he'd obviously sorted it with her via Norma. Brilliant. God rest her soul. Yeah.
We think of Norma today. We think of Norma today on this very, very sad day. Mark, lovely stories. Thanks very much indeed for that trip down memory lane and that tribute to the great man, Sir Bobby Charlton. Mark Lawrenson there. Thank you.
Excellent.
Thanks,
There we go. Now, thank you very much as well to you, Koiti, for that. We're focusing on the ongoing situation in the Middle East. The Israeli military have agreed to help evacuate babies from a hospital in Gaza to a safer facility. Israel's offer of a short-term ceasefire comes as international condemnation grows over its continued bombing of Gaza. Well, the World Health Organization has said that Al-Shifa Hospital is not functioning as a hospital anymore.
Meanwhile, the French President Macron has called on Israel to agree a ceasefire, saying there's no justification for bombing civilians in the embattled territory.
Well, joining us now is the journalist Jotam Confino. Good morning to you, Jotam. First of all, bring us up to date on the offer that was made by the IDF of help with these babies. My understanding is that it was rejected and that the Hamas-run Palestinian Health Ministry have said that actually the power that they were offering would only have lasted for 30 minutes, and it was a hollow offer.
Yeah, so again, conflicting information here. The Israelis are saying that they have for 5 weeks now, every single day, asked the people at the hospital, the medical staff to evacuate. They have also helped make sure that they could evacuate by keeping the eastern front of the Al-Shifa hospital open and to allow them to evacuate. They had said that they offered 300 liters of fuel to the hospital 2 days ago. It was not accepted. They have said that they are also helping, offering at least, to evacuate babies. It has also been rejected. Now, this is Israel's version of things. It's, of course, extremely difficult when you're not there on the ground to see things yourself, to actually to say what's true or what isn't true. But we know that Hamas is saying the exact opposite. Hamas is saying that the fuel that they were offered would last very little, first of all, and it also says that, or the hospital rather says that it's not possible to evacuate the people inside the hospital.
Meanwhile, the United States have come out backing Israel's claims that Hamas are using hospitals as military bases. And with that sort of support, it kind of endorses the actions of the IDF, even as the World Health Organization, the United Nations really urge them to stop.
Absolutely. I think it's quite telling that the European Union now is also accusing Hamas of using hospitals as human shields. It is not only a war crime, it also makes it basically, according to international law, if it's true, which Israel says it is, and the European Union, the United States, they all agree that this is actually what's happening on the ground. If this is true, then that removes the international shield, the law shield, from the hospital. Because if the hospital is used as a military base to attack the enemy, then it is no longer protected under international law. Now, you have to remember all this, because there are certain things that you have to abide by, such as proportionality. Just because you have Hamas people inside the Gaza hospital and the Al-Shifa hospital, you can't bomb the entire hospital. Now, that would be, first of all, disproportionate, but it does remove Israel's sort of strings on what it can and can't do when it comes to this hospital. But yet, we are to hear from many of the doctors that work there, from many of the international organizations, openly admit that this is the case. And whether that's because they've been threatened by Hamas or whether they just don't know what's happening, we still don't know. But it's quite astonishing that we haven't heard anything from the many NGOs that work in Gaza about this.
Confino, with that update from Tel Aviv this morning, thanks very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.
Still to come. Now, you're finding it hard to get a doctor's appointment. The Labour Party says they have got the answer. Find out what it is from the Shadow Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, after your weather.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life: your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Acquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle. Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's my new teeth.
It's your new teeth. I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Now, are you struggling to get a doctor's appointment, is the question this... Apparently we're not talking about doctor's appointments. We were going to talk about...
No, I think we're going to talk
weather.
about the weather situation now, because this storm Debbie, with one I, D-E-B-I, is causing havoc. We hear that it's hit the west coast of Ireland. Big problems in Galway, extreme flooding there. And where this is, we're saying it's hit the west coast of Ireland, but believe me, here in the southeast of England, it is a bad morning that you're waking up to. Torrential rain downfall, and it is heading northwards as well. So we're hearing about west of Ireland, southeast of England, southwest of England as well. So all in all, very, very wet, and there will be problems associated with that.
Power outages across Ireland and lots of trees down. And you were explaining to me when it hits Galway and places like that, it won't be long before it's in the Lake District.
3 hours, yeah.
And obviously both of us experienced torrential rain on our commute into work this morning. Lots of potential for aquaplaning, quite frankly, on big motorways, lots of pooling water.
The main arteries into London, we were talking about today, really all affected. And as Isabel said, if you've got a small car, a low-loaded car, it's going to be very, very difficult getting through. We're not just talking puddles here, and I imagine as the morning rush hour builds, that will just be gridlocked all over London.
That means for public transport, buses and the like as well. It's going to be a tricky commute. Perhaps you're already on the commute listening to us on the radio. We'd love to hear how you're getting on out there. And we're told that Storm Debbie is not the only storm to worry about. There might be another one come Wednesday evening called Storm Ellen, I believe, and that will be the last of this band of low pressure before hopefully
then Ellen's sister will arrive, and then their cousin will arrive. What stupid names, all these stupid names.
Take that up with the Met Office.
We've got the Shadow Health Secretary. I think he might have been delayed by the rain there. Wes Streeting in Victoria Gardens in London. Wes, good morning to you. We just
lost him.
We just had him, and then we lost him, and he may have been submerged.
Well, he will be talking to us in just a moment. Let's see if we can just chat whilst we sort out communications with him about struggling to get a doctor's appointment. I feel like every politician of every political colour always tries to convince the public that they will sort that out. Well, will Wes Streeting be the man to do it? Let's find out. I believe he's there now. Good morning to you, Shadow Health Secretary. Tell us about your pledge here, trying to sort out the relentless attempts of the British public to get through to their GP to make an appointment.
Look, I think there are two things. One is in terms of GP appointments, although there are more than 1 million more appointments now than there were pre-pandemic, people are struggling because there aren't enough GPs. That's why we've committed to double the number of medical school places, train up thousands of new doctors, and also reform the GP contract so that we get rid of loads of those bits of red tape that tie up GPs and instead prioritise the family-doctor relationship. So we bring back the family doctor at the same time as delivering more than 2 million more appointments a year in our hospitals through extra evening and weekend working, £1.1 billion directly into the pockets of NHS staff so that we can start cutting those waiting lists that have increased to record levels under the Conservatives.
I would love to applaud you. I would love to say good man, but quite honestly, it's nothing against you personally, but I just think you've got two hopes of that. You've got no hope and Bob Hope. It is a mission impossible, surely.
I don't think it is, Eamonn. Labour's got a good track record on this. We took the NHS in 1997, which was in a state then, and we delivered the shortest waiting times and the highest patient satisfaction in history. And now, 13 years on, in the grip of the worst crisis in the history of the NHS, we're making an argument that is not simply about investment, not least because the public finances are in an absolute mess, but is about reform and making sure that the money that goes into the NHS is spent in the right places and in the right way. Because I think all of us, whether we're patients or staff working in the NHS, can give examples of some of the failures in NHS bureaucracy where resources could be better directed. And, you know, going back to the previous answer, because people can't get a GP, for example, it costs, which would cost 40 quid for a GP appointment, they end up in A&E, which costs 360 quid for an appointment. So worse for the patient in terms of their experience, also more expensive for the taxpayer, which is my argument isn't simply more money, it's reform to make sure that the huge amounts of public money that are going into the NHS are spent in the right places in the right way. And I must say I'm deeply depressed this morning to see the government's response to this, which is to employ another round of management consultants. I mean, when has that ever been the answer?
You're referring to McKinsey being brought in by the NHS to ensure health chiefs are doing everything they possibly can to spend money correctly. What they've found when they've gone in is that actually hospitals are resisting savings where the government's trying to impose them.
Yeah, and that's not on. And you know, I'm speaking to NHS leaders in Liverpool this week, where I'll be setting out why the state of the public finances means that the answer can't simply be loads more money because the money isn't there, but also setting out that you know, when you can see examples of poor productivity in the NHS, outdated equipment and technology, systems that aren't working well, processes that aren't working well, which is a message I'm receiving from frontline NHS staff. You've got to change the way that the system works, and I want to work with NHS leaders to reform the system so that it's delivering for patients again. And you know, I'm afraid if we simply think the answer is the status quo when the NHS is in such a state, we won't have an NHS in 75 years if that's the attitude. I'm determined to make sure that we reform the NHS so that it's still there for us as a public service, free at the point of use, that central fair principle of the NHS, which has made it a much-loved institution for its 75 years of history.
But a big part of the problem, Wes, is money. It's money to pay for more staff, it's money to change conditions and practices that you're talking about. It's investment, it's to get ambulances on the roads. I could go on and on and on. And you're going to tell me you're going to tax nom-dom people and that's going to pay for it all, is it?
Well, where we've set out proposals for extra spending, as we have done to cut NHS waiting lists, deliver 700,000 extra NHS dentistry appointments a year, or put mental health support in every school in the country, we've set out how much it would cost and how it would be paid for. Our manifesto will be fully costed and fully funded, and I hope that by the time we get to the election, people are sick of hearing that, and when they pick up our manifesto and see the sums, how much we'll raise and how much we'll spend, they'll see that we meant it, because the public finances are in a mess. The Conservatives have crashed the economy, and therefore, even if money was the only answer, and I don't believe it is, by the way, the money simply isn't there. And when people are facing highest taxes for 70 years, we can't ask people on lower middle incomes to pay more, as the Conservatives have done. They simply can't afford it. So where we are putting proposals in for extra investment, we're looking to fair sources of income, like abolishing the non-dom tax status or abolishing the tax loopholes enjoyed by private equity fund managers. And my goodness, when we put that forward, don't you hear the howls of complaint from the wealthy, well-connected, who can get their arguments out in the newspapers and get themselves on the telly to tell us all why that's unfair. But when it comes to clobbering people on lower middle incomes, as this government has done, the government doesn't blink. And we don't hear the same howls of outrage because those people don't have the same voices in our national newspapers and on the telly. And that's why Labour is putting fairness first, trying to protect the pockets of people on lower middle incomes who are working hard and struggling to make ends meet, and making sure that where we are raising money, not only are we doing it fairly, but we're also spending it wisely, because every penny of taxpayers' money has got to be carefully spent, especially when families are making really difficult decisions as they juggle the family shop, the bills, the rents and the mortgages, as people are today.
Wes Streeting, I have to ask you finally about Suella Braverman. Your boss, Sir Keir Starmer, says she's demeaned her office and has stoked tensions within British communities. Don't you think, though, that it is fair to say she has a point that the police have double standards? We've seen a photograph this morning of two police officers over the weekend posing with a child who looks frankly dressed identically to a Hamas terrorist. You know, not only holding a flag and with their head covered up, but this is a child brandishing these kinds of tools at a protest. Is that appropriate for the police?
I haven't seen that photo, to be perfectly honest with you, but what I can say is there's no doubt whatsoever that while the majority of people on that march are there for good reasons, they're worried about the humanitarian crisis and they've conducted themselves peacefully, we've also seen examples of banners, T-shirts, slogans that are racist and hateful, and that has to be dealt with, just as those thugs who turned up to the cenotaph and hospitalised some police officers and injured others, they have to feel the full force of the law too. And where I think the Home Secretary has gone badly wrong is firstly undermining the police, as she did with that article in the Times last week, but also not giving them the powers to do the job. In 2019 and 2021, the government was told explicitly that new laws were needed to tackle hateful conduct like we saw over the weekend. And yet here we are in 2023 and it still hasn't happened. So she's got a lot of brass neck pointing the finger of blame at the police for failures on her own watch. And frankly, given she had to resign from government for national security 5 days before Rishi Sunak appointed her.
Thought,
she's unfit for office then, she's unfit for office now.
What you'll not be aware of is that there is a cabinet reshuffle underway. We are told. Now, I see you raise your eyebrows there. Anything you want to say about that before we cross to Downing Street?
Oh,
sorry, the director's not listening to me. I just asked the question there. Forgive me. Has Wes Streeting gone? I think.
OK, well, let's cross to our political editor, Christopher Hope, who's got his finger on the pulse. And we're told the breaking news this hour that Rishi Sunak is indeed conducting a cabinet reshuffle as we speak.
That's right. You wanted the latest, Isabel. We've got it for you. The reshuffle is now underway. That will mean probably that Suella Braverman is out of government today. We'll wait and see what this means for policy on home affairs and all sorts of other areas. Others who might go, probably Therese Coffey, the Environment Secretary, and others too. This is the big moment, the chance for the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, to cement, to put his authority on his party, and it's a fractious party recently, notably in the row of the Armistice Day demonstrations by those pro-Palestinian marches. So a big moment here for Mr Sunak, and he'll try and set up his own team looking into the next general election. I'm expecting a big drop in age in the cabinet. I think we'll see more young ministers, young MPs promoted, who became MPs in 2019, promoted up to the top jobs. This is a chance, I think, for the Tory party to reshape itself and really challenge and take on Sir Keir Starmer.
Do you think that Suella Braverman could survive a reshuffle? I've read some commentary saying she might actually stay in post because not only do we have the Supreme Court decision on Wednesday, but also net migration figures out next week.
Well, that's right. She could survive. It seems unlikely because the way she's behaved recently certainly with that piece in the Times last Thursday, it seemed to undermine the Prime Minister, although they are on the same page in terms of the way those demonstrations happened on Saturday and the control required by the police. They are on the same page politically, but just tonally, I'm not entirely sure they're on the same page, and they're not entirely there's a degree of trust between certainly the operations.
Just to interrupt you, Chris, we're just hearing reporting from Sky News that Suella Braverman has been sacked.
That is no surprise. We're expecting that, and it comes ahead of an extraordinary time for in Home Affairs. We have on Wednesday we have this key decision, the Rwanda decision by the Supreme Court. Next week we have net migration figures out on Thursday. A big moment here. So no surprise that we have lost Suella Braverman this morning.
OK. Chris, thank you very much indeed. We will be right across what reshuffle has happened. What next for Suella Braverman? Keep it here, GB News, and we will be back after this short break.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamonn.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's at Drive Time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Welcome back. It's a developing picture here this morning. It has now been confirmed in the last few moments that Suella Braverman, the Home Secretary, has been sacked by Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. And in the last few moments, the Foreign Secretary, James Cleverly, has been spotted going inside the famous black door of number 10 Downing Street. I don't know what that means, whether or not his position might change or if he's just going in for a meeting. But the timing is certainly very interesting, and we are keeping a close eye on all of those developments, and we'll make sure you are the first to hear. But should we get some reaction to our panel who are here to go through the headline makers this morning? But frankly, there's only one story in town now. Alex Armstrong, are you surprised to see that the Prime Minister has taken this decision?
I don't know whether I'm surprised, but I'm going to be very surprised to see what his right-wing side of the parties have to say about this. I know so many of them have publicly come out and supported Suella. Rishi even said just a few weeks or days ago that he publicly backed Suella Braverman, which famously, whenever a Prime Minister ever says that, they are gone not long afterwards. I mean, you know, given the protests over the weekend and some of the scenes we saw, I'm not shocked that Rishi has taken his stance on removing her. I just don't know how well that's going to play with his base. I don't know how Tory voters are going to feel about it, but let's see.
With his base, or with, I mean, it's a broad...
Well, yes,
I believe there's around 30 to 40 within the Conservative Party, big Suella fans, and around twice that within the Conservative Party who now find her to be too much. This is the second time she's been sacked as Home Secretary.
Yes, it is, actually. Yeah, she's making a habit of it, isn't it? Third time lucky. I agree completely with Alex. I'm not shocked because I think he had to do something. I mean, the thing is, she is so obviously out of control. Her rhetoric is out of control. That she's making Rishi Sunak look weak at a time when the Conservative Party and the leader needs to look strong. As Alex has just said, how this is going to play out with the extreme right of the party, if you can use that phrase, and indeed the Red Wall voters, who she was quite popular with. I mean, we saw at the weekend there were lots of people saying, yeah, Suella, she speaks for the silent majority majority in this country.
Well, a lot of them contacting this very programme this morning saying exactly the same thing. And quite embarrassingly, I think at the cenotaph, I think she walked up...
With James Cleverly.
With James Cleverly.
She did, yeah.
We should get those pictures and roll them.
The wreath
yes, she did.
together. So, but of course, we don't know that he's accepted any role yet, but he's been summoned to number 10.
The question I want to get my head around is, what was the straw that broke the camel's back? I mean, we certainly got the sense, didn't we, from Downing Street, that they were very annoyed about the Times article. You could argue that it was their fault for not double-checking before it went out, if they weren't content with it. But do you think, as some are blaming Suella Braverman directly for the disorder that we saw on Saturday?
No.
Some people saying that she was fanning the flames. That's Hamza Yousaf. And indeed, we've had the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, saying that she demeaned her office and she's done more to stoke hatred than any other Home Secretary.
Look, I don't think it is Suella's fault that there was a counter-protest on the weekend. Those protests were organised well in advance. Whether her comments were helpful, that's a very good question to ask people. I genuinely do think that, it's refreshing to see politicians talk about their opinions and to actually give some voice to people who feel they haven't got any. Whether you should do that as Home Secretary is another question to ask. Well, I mean, I think there's a lot of people that like Suella Braverman. I've seen a lot of support for her online, and I know GB News viewers, a lot of them will also like Suella Braverman. Whether Rishi's done this because he's looking weak, because he's taken a very weak stance over the weekend, even Boris showed him up, is perhaps maybe one of the reasons you can't show up the main act.
He had no alternative. He's the manager of the football team and she's a player. End of. And, if it was Alex Ferguson, Arsene Wenger, whatever, David Moyes, they would be saying, I'm in charge here.
I think that's a very good comparison, actually. She's obviously completely out of control. And, the fact that she did the article in the Times on Thursday and they didn't even know about it. If you are the manager of a football team or running a newspaper, you should know what your key players are up to. Yeah. And they didn't know about that. And, whether she speaks for the silent majority or not, I don't know. But her rhetoric is inflammatory. I think I agree that policing is done differently depending on the marches, etc. But I think the rhetoric, and I think another thing that was a nail in the coffin for her was the comment about homelessness being a lifestyle choice. Now, whether you are on the right wing or the left wing or in between, I don't think anyone can agree with that statement. And I think that was a very, very dangerous thing to say.
I agree, Dawn. I do wonder, given what's coming up on Wednesday with the big court settlement over Rwanda, whether actually she wants to get herself sacked. I wonder whether that's better than losing this debate.
Apparently her team have said very much that she didn't want to.
Of course they will.
But, will this help her if she, at some point is facing a leadership bid after a general election next year? I think probably she's a bit of a martyr now, isn't she, for a certain faction within the party. I think what's surprising to me, if James Cleverly becomes the new Home Secretary, is that the Prime Minister would feel at a time when the Foreign Secretary's got a pretty big brief himself, dealing with the problems in the Middle East, dealing with the problems with Russia and Ukraine, that he feels now is a good time to move his Foreign Secretary. And you were saying earlier there was lots of talk about whether Jeremy Hunt might survive a reshuffle in coming weeks, because there could be some arguing that he's not doing enough to promote growth or whatever else the party are calling for at the point just this close to an election.
Yeah, and I think when you remove someone as big a character as Suella, I mean, she's all over the papers, you have to replace her with an equally strong voice, as particularly, I mean, you're talking about there being chaos abroad, but there's also seemed to be a lot of cultural and political chaos at home. So putting someone who's strong in this position is critical for Rishi's survival as PM, in my opinion. He's now going to have a lot of very vocal backbenchers, including a couple of former prime ministers there. So, he does need to strengthen up his front bench. And I don't know whether Jeremy Hunt actually is the guy that's going to inspire that red wall vote to survive.
But the reason I agree with you, I think Jeremy Hunt will be going in the reshuffle, which will probably happen after.
Do you think so? Do you not think they learn nothing from the Liz Truss situation, which is that they had to have someone who the city trusted and is doing the city's bidding, which is what Hunt is doing.
Yeah, no, I agree, but I mean, is it popular with the voters? And now everything is all out to win that election, which is coming with scary rapidness. And I think Jeremy Hunt is never going to go back on cutting taxes. He's not going to do that. It's very unpopular amongst the Tory faithful that we are paying so many high taxes. So I think Rishi probably sees that as a vote winner.
And Hunt was always classed as the caretaker of that role. He wasn't seen to be somebody that was there to really march the Tory vote forward. So perhaps he's fulfilled his job as caretaker, and Rishi's going to want a vote winner in for the next election. I don't see Hunt as the vote winner. In fact, he's not actually very popular with the Conservative Party base. Multiple failed leadership attempts. So I do think they will put someone else in as well.
All very interesting. We will keep a close eye on that famous street and see if we spot any other faces going in and out. But I think that is the strongest signal yet that perhaps James Cleverly could be our new Home Secretary. The question is, who would then become Foreign Secretary if he is to move? And we were hearing from Christopher Hope there, lots of new, perhaps younger faces could be drafted in as well.
Maybe just Grant Shapps again.
But he's done every job, really, hasn't he? I mean, he's got to get round to it eventually. I mean, Kemi Badenoch is a name that keeps coming up as a young, rising star. She also has... I mean, politics aren't about personality. Obvious, Boris Johnson's illustrated that. But she also has the personality and a presence that maybe people are looking for now.
Agreed.
It's that silence whilst the meetings are going on in Downing Street, which is unbearable. You're just dying to know what's being said. I'm sure there'll be lots of letters published on Twitter in the next half hour.
James Cleverly knew yesterday when he was at the Cenotaph with
Well.
Suella.
Awkward. Now, how awkward is it going to be? Nigel Farage in the jungle. So he will land in Australia, I think, today. So he is part of the I'm a Celeb cast.
Yes, absolutely. It's another Matt Hancock figure, isn't it? I mean, everybody, whether you love or loathe... I
think it's different. I don't think... Hancock was in a position of weakness. I think Farage goes in a position of strength.
Absolutely, but it's that very, very divisive political figure.
I think the difference is Hancock was never going to go back into politics. Farage is.
Yes, no.
Does he come back more popular, and does he come back with a whole new swathe of younger people thinking he's cool?
It depends how he plays it. I mean, you know, Nigel is a colleague on GBNews, so I think he is very good on TV. I have to say, whether you agree with his politics or not,
he's a very charming man. He's very, very good socially.
Yeah, and the way to win our I'm a Celebrity in the Jungle is to be nice, properly nice, to be kind, to be helpful. It's not to start fights. It's not to be divisive. So I think, provided he remembers that and doesn't get in too many political debates in there, then I think he's in with a chance of winning. I don't know what the bookies are saying, but I wouldn't be surprised.
It all depends who's in there with him.
Yes,
and
indeed.
ITV, I believe, have been trying to find someone who he can riff with,
spark off with.
Yeah, and you know, that can be really difficult 24/7 to be in a place where you're not eating. I don't know if he's been given a deal where he's allowed to smoke, because he's a very heavy smoker. If he's not allowed to smoke and somebody's at him,
fiery.
you know, that becomes a difficult situation.
And I quite like Nigel Farage, and I think he'll do very well on the show. I mean, a lot of people like Nigel. I think now more than ever he's probably at his most popular. I think he comes across quite ordinary to many people watching GB News and people watching I'm a Celeb. I won't be surprised if he wins, frankly.
No, I won't.
Josie Gibson will win.
He has got a smoking deal, by the way. He is allowed
we have a
to sneak out and have a cigarette off. Yeah, but a lot of them do.
That's like a medical condition. Right.
Quick line on the reshuffle. Neil O'Brien has left his ministerial role in the Department for Health and Social Care.
Not Neil O'Brien, has he? Is that Neil O'Brien? Neil O'Brien has left his job in government.
It's a reshuffle.
We didn't know he was in government. Anyway, back after the weather.
Hello there, good morning. I'm Jonathan Vautry here with your GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. Storm Debbie, named by Met Éireann, the Irish Weather Service, is providing a very unsettled start to this new working week. It has significantly deepened overnight, and those isobars are really squeezing together to provide some very strong gusts of wind, up to 80 miles an hour along coastal areas of the Irish Sea and over the Pennines, but even other inland areas of northern England and North Wales could see gusts of 60 to 65 miles an hour. So please do take care over the course of today, because some disruption is possible from those strong winds, but also the heavy rain as well across Northern Ireland, Northern England, also focus for eastern Scotland during the afternoon as well. Southern areas of England and Wales seeing some drier, brighter interludes, perhaps into the far south of Northern Ireland later on as well, but it is still going to be a very blustery day here nonetheless, so that will take the edge off the feel of things, even if the thermometer does say 15 or 16 degrees Celsius. During this evening and overnight, Storm Debbie will eventually clear its way off into the North Sea, so most of the rainfall taking it away with it. But we'll see some blustery showers pushing their way in from the west as we head into the second half of the night. With all of that around and still quite a breeze in place, we're not expecting it to turn too chilly overnight. Generally, temperatures holding around 6 to 10 degrees Celsius. Tuesday then sees a day of showers across all areas of the UK. Some of those could be heavy at times with some hail and thunderstorms in the mixture as well. Quite a lot of clouds still in between those showers for northern England up into Scotland, but perhaps parts of Northern Ireland, Wales and central southern areas of England seeing some sunny spells in there as well. But some further wet and windy weather on the cards for the rest of the week. Bye-bye.
Good. Emma Burnell. Right.
Why have we got a Labour voice when we've got a Tory reshuffle? We should have a Labour voice.
We're on air, Isabel. Yes, forgive me. I know we shouldn't be, but here we go. Back after.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's my new teeth.
It's your new teeth.
I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's at Drive Time, 3 till 6 p.m. Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Solid, punchy politics with a bit of a twist. We not only want to
So the breaking, developing news that we're tuning into, the Home Secretary's gone. She's been sacked Rishi Sunak has decided he's had enough with her outspoken views, and she is now no more. The man beside her there, Isabel, playing a very important role in all of this.
That is James Cleverly, the Foreign Secretary, and speculation is mounting that he could be announced as the new Home Secretary after he was spotted heading inside Downing Street this morning. And there have been some other interesting names being spotted going down that famous street. We'll have full analysis on that from Christopher Hope in just a moment.
Well, let's go to Christopher Hope now and find out what he makes of all of this. Christopher, we're hearing reports that David Cameron has been spotted in Downing Street this morning. I don't know if you're hearing that as well.
That's right, he's spotted in 10 Downing Street. I think this could be, there's an idea, it's been mooted after he quit as Prime Minister in 2016, he could end up maybe as a Foreign Secretary in the same way that William Hague became a Foreign Secretary when he was, David Cameron, I should say, was the Prime Minister. That's one idea, not confirmed, but that could be it, because, of course, we are hearing reports, and we're getting confirmed from Downing Street, that James Cleverly is going to be the new Home Secretary, leaving a space up there as in the role of Foreign Secretary, which could be filled by someone like David Cameron. Just an idea. We also know junior Health Minister Neil O'Brien has quit the Health Department, so therefore we are seeing a wider reshuffle than just replacing Suella Braverman.
Just want to get the Cameron thing here.
Yeah.
You see, I find this very, very exciting. When we talk about statesmanship, equality needed to be Foreign Secretary, someone with history, someone who has been Prime Minister, do you actually think that could work? What has Cameron been doing with his life up until now? Is he ready for this?
He certainly, there's more in the tank, as they say in politics. He was a young man when he quit as Prime Minister. Of course, he wasn't meant to go in 2016. He had planned to serve until as late as 2018, 2019, before he would then go then. So I think he's got more to give. He's been heavily busy in dementia, Alzheimer's. There was some rows about his behaviour trying to make money, if you recall there, with some complicated financial business. That went away. There's more to give. There is a model here if he becomes Foreign Secretary. There's a big if around this, by the way. All we know is he's gone through the door of 10 Downing Street. But this idea of becoming a kind of Lord Salisbury figure, a Lord Hague figure, of course, this kind of role of being a role on the stage as a Foreign Secretary. I should say, of course, that the idea there would be that he could do this from the Lords. That's possible. I should say, while I've been on air, Nick Gibb, who's the Schools Minister, has also resigned the government. So we're seeing spaces open up right now in Department for Education, in the Health Department, and, of course, the top of the Home Office.
I remember going back to the Falklands Day. Correct me, Peter Carrington was a Lord. He was Lord Carrington, wasn't he, at the time? And I'm pretty sure not an MP.
He was not an MP, he was a Lord. I should say, of course, William Hague was the Foreign Affairs spokesman, not actually in office. But the point is, you can do that kind of high-end role. The role of Foreign Secretary, if it goes to David Cameron, again, not confirmed, were that to happen, it'd be a role which isn't really very political, because you're most of the year you're on a plane doing our work, our country's work, as our chief diplomat, in a sense. So in a sense, it would suit him, and I think he's got more to give. He didn't want to go as Prime Minister in 2016. Again, not confirmed. What we do have confirmed is other people leaving the government. Of course, we have Nick Gibb, the highly regarded schools minister. He has gone, widely credited for lifting standards in our schools over the past decade. He's been in and out as the schools minister. We also have Neil O'Brien from the Health Department. He's gone. We know that Suella Braverman has gone. And we think, not confirmed yet, that James Cleverly is the new Home Secretary. So space is opening up throughout government. This will be a much wider reshuffle than just replacing Suella Braverman.
Yeah, this is really interesting. I'm just reading Nick Gibb. I mean, we've talked to him many times on this programme, Eamonn and I, and he's been in that post a long time. Just reading his tweet he's put out, over the last few weeks I've been discussing taking up a diplomatic role after the general election. To enable me to do so, I've asked the Prime Minister if I can step down from the government at the reshuffle, and he has agreed. So making it clear that he wasn't sacked. He also served, I believe, as Schools Minister under David Cameron, under Theresa May, under Boris Johnson, and now under Rishi Sunak. So there will be some movement. Go on.
Well, to say, I mean, I think his record in government is one of the most successful in government. He successfully implemented phonics amongst young children, lifting up reading ages and general academic ability. outpacing other comparable nations, notably Scotland and elsewhere. So he is seen as someone who's very well regarded in the whole school sector. For him to say his idea is to go to be a diplomat, that's a departure for him, but I think he goes with the good wishes of a lot of Tories who feel he's done very well in that job.
With all due respect, Chris, he's not well respected as regards concrete, is he? He missed a few opportunities there. But we hear what you say. I mean, a career educational politician looking for that diplomatic job. But Chris, tell me this. Does this mean if Braverman is sacked, do all her people, do all her creatures, do all her aficionados, do they have to go as well?
I don't know who you mean by creatures, Eamonn. Do you mean colleagues? I suppose her political team would leave, certainly. The special advisors and others would leave. In terms of those below her, Robert Jenrick, he's the immigration minister. Chris Philp, of course, he's the policing minister. We don't know what happens to them. Those two are not seen, as I would see it, as allies of Suella Braverman. In fact, to a degree, Jenrick was put in there to man-mark Suella Braverman to ensure that the PM had someone who was more in line with maybe where he sits in politics than Suella Braverman. So she was slightly on her own, a lone gunner, you might say, at the Home Office. So I don't think you can say other ministers might go to now she's gone. Certainly the team around Suella Braverman, they've all gone. All the political team have gone.
Suella Braverman, what next? Can't wait to hear what she has to say later today, how she paints this one.
Well, that's right. And what next? I mean, is she going because she knows that she's been sacked, don't forget. What about Wednesday? Well, Wednesday is this big decision by the Supreme Court on the Rwanda processing plan for illegal arrivals by over the water from France. If that is passed, then it really is a huge fillip for Rishi Sunak. Maybe the first planes can start taking off from April next year. If not, Suella Braverman will become the person who will lead the charge for the UK probably to withdraw from the European Court of Human Rights, the European Convention of Human Rights, so to give better control over our borders to our own courts here, not rely on the rulings from Strasbourg. So she'll become a major figure on the right. She's already, of course, but maybe even a major critic on the right. Next week, next Thursday, net migration figures are likely to show a huge increase again. Hundreds of thousands of people arriving here legally on the Home Secretary's watch, and maybe she'll find it hard to say make remarks there against her own record. But certainly these two areas, there's a big week in Home Affairs, a big week as this Tory party tried to deliver on what it said it would do at the referendum, at the manifesto, I should say, in 2019, and also last week when Rishi Sunak became Prime Minister, last year when PM became Prime Minister.
Can we talk a bit more about the big plot twist of David Cameron this morning? I'm just trying to get my head around this a bit more. I mean, let's not forget, this is a man who campaigned very much to remain in the European Union, unlike possibly his new boss, Rishi Sunak. This is somebody who very recently said the decision on HS2 was wrong. This is somebody who was forced to deny in 2018 that he wanted to be Foreign Secretary. Lots of people were speculating that he fancied one last stab in government. And he's also got to come in to Rishi Sunak, who's talked a lot about the false consensus of the past.
Yeah, there's lots of baggage there if you're a former Prime Minister, Isabel. Of course, you're right in saying that. I do think, though, that he was privately quite Brexity. Whenever I went on visits with him to Brussels back in the early part of the last decade, it was quite clear he was pretty happy when he came home, and the joshing was certainly a kind of mistrust of the whole Brussels machinery. Almost in contrast to Boris Johnson, who was seen as being quite pro-EU, pro-Brussels, of course. So I think he, yes, of course, he did fight for Remain, but he also is the person who gave that choice to the country. And he's obviously a Democrat, and when the country voted against what he wanted, he left. I think there's a way around that. There's no question he did fight for the Remain cause, but I do think, I've always thought privately, he's quite a Brexiteer.
Couple of minutes to update yourself with your contacts and news that's coming in to you. While back here in the studio, we bring in Andrew Pearce, who's ready to go with Britain's Newsroom from 9:30. And all I can say to you is, well,
That is jaw-dropping. David Cameron going into number 10, not least because Rishi Sunak, in his conference speech just a few weeks ago, trashed the last 30 years of political orthodoxy. Well, David Cameron was Prime Minister for 6 of those.
Shows you how bored he is, doesn't it?
He's 57, David Cameron. What's he got to do?
Yeah.
He tried financial lobbying. That all went horribly wrong because he got criticised for inappropriate lobbying of government ministers, including Rishi Sunak, for a company called Greensill. He's only 57. He is, though, Eamonn, he's a class act.
You just took the words out of my mouth. When you think of people like Francis Pym or Carrington, whatever in the past, who were not MPs, but who carried off that foreign secretary bit with a class and a diplomacy.
And David Cameron, of course, still knows lots of world leaders. Yes. He knows Macron, he knows the President of the United States. He's still got good contacts. And what they'll do, they'll create a peerage for him. He could be Foreign Secretary this afternoon. Amazing. And it will reset the government, and it will stop people just concentrating on the squabble over the Home Secretary, Suella Braverman.
Well, that's absolutely right, actually.
Suddenly we're not talking about Braverman.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're talking
curveball.
We're talking about the return of David Cameron, who should not have resigned on the spot, frankly, over Brexit. He created... It was his mess. He should have stuck around a bit longer to sort it out. I mean, I speak as one who voted for Brexit, but he should have stuck around a bit longer.
But maybe a vote winner for the Tories in the election, and who knows, maybe a route for him back into top-level politics.
And he would not be the first Foreign Secretary to operate from the Lords. As say, Peter Carrington did it. It was a class act. Douglas Hume in the 1960s, and he then ran for the Tory leadership.
And this resets the Conservative Party, doesn't it, from the Boris years and all the disdain that they're taking and the flack that they're attracting via Boris Johnson. Cameron back in there with Sunak, I think it strengthens Sunak in many ways.
Of course it does. He looks and sounds the part. I've known David Cameron since he was a young advisor to Norma Lamont, and I was a young reporter, and we used to go for lunch, long boozy lunches. What are we hearing? Isabel's got some news.
Just a breaking line from Suella Braverman, who's been speaking. The Press Association are reporting that she has come out this morning and said it's been the greatest privilege of my life to serve as Home Secretary, and I will have more to say in due course. And you can guarantee she will.
Well, she can.
She'll probably say it on here. She'll probably be a presenter here.
Well, she can, of course, make a resignation statement where, by tradition, the cabinet, the person who's resigned from the cabinet, been sacked from the cabinet, is listened to and sign it. She could do that. It's what Geoffrey Howe did very famously, which brought down Margaret Thatcher. So she's not going to go quietly, and she will be a thorn in the side for Rishi Sunak on the backbenches. But he's obviously decided to assert his strengths by getting rid of her.
She could be a thorn in the side, but she can't necessarily be a dagger in the back, can she? Or in the heart?
I don't think she's got the support on the backbenches. I think it is overestimated. She's a very feisty, fiery politician. She's got lots to say, and I think he had to get rid of her just in case, but right now, because if the Supreme Court, Eamonn, kicks out the Rwanda plan, she might have resigned on principle, and he loses his chance to sack her because he wanted to sack her to be seen to be being tough.
Interesting.
It's also Machiavellian, isn't it?
James Cleverly to inherit.
It is a pantomime word.
What a nightmare for James Cleverly to inherit, because we've got the big migration figures out next week, and we've got big controversy coming up on Wednesday. Who knows which way it's going to go, but judges so far have not found in favour of the government.
But he's seen as a safe pair of hands. He's done very well as Foreign Secretary, and I think the Prime Minister wants him much closer. He wants him around a lot, because of course the Foreign Secretary's on a plane a lot, travelling a lot, and David Cameron will, if he is going to be our Foreign Secretary, I think I can't see where else he's going.
If you're just waking up, you're just joining us here on the programme, there is the headline on your screen. Breaking news: within the last half hour, Suella Braverman has been sacked as the Home Secretary from the government. We believe James Cleverly may well take her place, and big rumours that David Cameron, former Prime Minister of coalition government, David Cameron, may return as Foreign Secretary. Not as far-fetched as it sounds.
Yeah, there's form for this.
They've also had a chance to talk about this on Sunday, because they were together at the Cenotaph.
Of course, they were plotting perhaps, and also this picture of Suella Braverman alongside James Cleverly laying a wreath at the same time, perhaps whilst their backs were turned. Rishi and Cameron were having a chinwag.
A lot of business can be done, and David Cameron is always there, of course, as a former Prime Minister, but I suspect quite a lot of the detail of whatever's happening now now was being thrashed out behind the scenes.
Do you think this would have been a difficult decision for David Cameron, you know, to accept, or do you think he's been looking for an opportunity?
No, he's not even 60 and he's bored. What's he going to do with the rest of his life? He tried lobbying finance, didn't get anywhere, and I think he realises he's got a lot still to give, and the country needs him, and the Tory party needs him.
This is a drug. We look at that front door there, number 10. Yeah. It is a drug to people like David Cameron.
It is.
Unfinished business when you look at Brexit. And, you know, you look at it and a lot of people say, why did you resign? Why did you put yourself in a corner where you just had to resign? You did it, no one else did it.
And I think he should have stuck around and gone back to Europe and said, look, you didn't give me a proper deal. Britain's voted for Brexit, now we're going to get the best deal we can out of it. And he had the contacts to do it. He shouldn't have walked away as quickly as he did. So now he's going to give something back. Good on him. Some Brexiteers will think it's unconscionable, but I think this is a cabinet shorn of big names, and he's the biggest name in the cabinet.
There were rumours about whether or not Jeremy Hunt might end up finding himself being moved, perhaps not in this reshuffle, perhaps in the next one. Do you think that's likely? We've got the autumn statement next week, but there's again a a wing of the party who've been very much calling for changes within the political, the Treasury's approach to things, you know, tax cuts. Hunt's not going to be the man to cut.
I still don't think Jeremy Hunt will be Chancellor of the Exchequer when the Tories go into the next general election, whenever that is. I think if he can do it, he's going to make a woman Chancellor of the Exchequer to scupper Labour's guns. He doesn't want Labour having the first ever woman Chancellor of the Exchequer. There'll be a few strong women who'd be contenders. So I think Hunt will be all right today because the autumn statement is next week.
Well, I know, but it wasn't enough to save Suella.
No.
What do you think was the straw that broke the camel's back with Suella Braverman? Do you think it was these arrests of far-right thugs, as they're being described, on Saturday, or do you think it was basically going behind Downing Street's back with the article last week, or just repeat offences?
It's repeat offences, and I think the article, which was not signed off by Number 10, they said we want these corrections done. Look, you've got to follow collective cabinet responsibility for a cabinet minister.
But she's not stupid. She's a very sensible, very good businesswoman, very successful, ethnic minority person. You know, top job in government. So this didn't happen by accident.
No, and she's content to be on the backbenches where she will raise the banner of... But there's going to be no challenge for the general election. She can solidify her position on the backbench between now and the next general election, which could be as early as May. Who knows? I think probably the autumn, but Rishi goes into the general election pretty much with this team that's coming in. So it'll be interesting to see what she has to say.
Let's keep that camera permanently on Number 10, team, and if you could do other pictures on the other side, that would be fab. We don't want to miss anybody going in or out today. I don't mind what you show on the other side of the screen, but we've got to keep a camera trained on that famous door because we don't want to miss Cameron going in or out, wherever else it might be.
Fascinating. Of course, these days they spare cabinet ministers the indignity of the walk of shame.
Once they've been biffed, they can go out the back.
They can go out the back door.
I think that's a shame. Why don't they make the walk
because they don't want to give you and I all the pleasure of watching their discomfort.
Do you think Suella Braverman will be disappointed, or do you think she will relish the chance to say what she really thinks if she hasn't already?
Well, she's pretty much said what she thinks anyway.
You never know, do you?
Yeah, no, she'll relish it, and this is game on for her. She thinks she will be the next Conservative Party leader. I don't think she will be, but you never know. I wondered if there was going to be a big job here for Kemi Badenoch.
So did I, actually.
The reshuffle's not over yet.
The reshuffle's not over, although you're not going to see her as a education minister or a junior minister in the Department for Health and Social Care.
No,
so
they'd have to have a very big job for Therese Coffey. I suspect the environment sector would be astonished if she survives this reshuffle. I can't see why she's still there now.
Yeah, no, I can't disagree.
I was with Theresa Coffey at the races a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
She's an interesting woman, but she has done very well at surviving.
It's extraordinary because she was the right-hand woman of Liz Truss, so you thought she'd be out the door with a big sharp elbow. But they kept her in because I think he wanted to try and keep the Trussites happy. But she can go. She's not exactly a great addition to the cabinet, in my view.
Just to remind you, Suella Braverman has been sacked as Home Secretary after she defied Number 10. This was in the Times article accusing the Metropolitan Police of bias in the policing of protests. The weekend has happened, and this is the retribution as a result of all of that.
I'm just continuing to see updates. This is a few comments from Nick Gibb. We've already read that one out. So PA is just catching up with us, just keeping a close eye on all those developments. But it's a fast developing picture. And, you know, people say, is this a bit of a Westminster bubble story? It's not. It's hugely significant for the whole country, I suppose you could say, because...
Also, the Foreign Secretary is a very important role, particularly at the moment with what's happening in the Middle East. Yeah. With happening in Ukraine. Yeah. It's a really, really important role. And Britain is still a player on the world stage relating to that. David Cameron will bring years of experience.
And as you say, who Cameron knows what connection he's had already, and it needs someone of that status to be able to carry that out.
We have Neil Parish standing by. You might remember him. He was forced to stand down for Tiverton and Honiton, and he joins us this morning. Good morning to you, Mr. Parish. Wondering what you make of the news you've heard so far this morning. Suella Braverman out, and possibly Cleverly and Cameron in.
Yeah, interesting, because I think the Cameron decision is a good one. I think Suella Braverman, yes, Rishi Sunak better prepare for war, I think, because, of course, she is very much, Suella, the standard bearer of the right of the party. And so now I can understand, you know, as Home Secretary, she was probably ill-advised to make these comments. The problem is she does reflect a lot of opinion in the country. Very interesting now to see what happens, but I suspect Rishi Sunak in the end was sort of left with no alternative. But I would have thought she would have been reshuffled rather than sacked. But it's an interesting situation politically for Rishi Sunak, the government, and the Conservative Party, I would suggest.
For a fight, though, isn't she? She's looking. If you, as you believe, she was going to be shuffled off elsewhere, she's not accepting that. She obviously has a lot of faith in her own abilities and her own support and her ability to cause chaos if she wants.
Yes, I think, unfortunately, she may well be positioning herself for what may come after the next general election. Now, I think this is what people get so fed up with politicians and politics, is the fact that, you know, they start repositioning themselves before the body is even dead. And I think that is the problem here. And I think this is what's likely to happen now. Now, you know, I can't write what's going to happen in the future, but I think it's a very tricky situation for Rishi Sunak. He would have been damned if he didn't, and he'll probably be damned now that he's done it. And it's going to be fascinating to watch, especially for me. I'm glad in many ways I'm not sitting in Westminster with all the repercussions, because I think there will be repercussions within the party itself. Because, you see, I believe the marches should never have taken place on Remembrance Sunday and on the Saturday of the weekend of the Remembrance. And I think it should have been stopped. And so she has much support for her views, albeit I think she is probably was out of control as far as Rishi Sunak was concerned.
So as far as Rishi Sunak is concerned, have we got now at 23 minutes past 9 on this Monday morning a stronger Prime Minister, a stronger government if David Cameron comes in as Foreign Secretary, or a weaker one?
I think, you know, I got to do a political on this one. Let's wait and see. I think it's a very dangerous situation. I mean, I think Rishi Sunak could be seen as strong for doing it. It just depends on the support she has within the Conservative Party, because at the moment the Conservative Party is a fragile coalition from the right and the middle and so on. And I think you'll find it's going to be fascinating now to watch it. I mean, I think the putting David Cameron in is a really good move, because I think that will help over the Middle East and other parts of the world. So that may help to deflect the problems over Suella Braverman. Have we yet? I don't think we've yet heard.
Oh, we seem to have lost that line, but that's OK. We were just about to say goodbye, and thank you very much indeed for talking to us. That was Neil Parish, a former Conservative Party MP. We're going to look back on Suella Braverman's career. Just before we throw a final...
I was just to say one thing about David Cameron. Cabinet ministers often, we look at the cabinet, they lack gravitas. Cameron's got gravitas, and that's in
Well,
in
he's a
short
former
supply.
Prime Minister,
Yeah,
no less.
for 6 years. He was former, and so he's bringing real gravitas to Rishi Sunak's cabinet.
Isabel was talking earlier about people who are much smaller when you meet them in real life.
Yeah.
Cameron's taller.
He's very tall.
He's very tall.
Yeah,
Nice.
we've met him and interviewed him together.
Yeah.
Well, have we?
Yeah.
You remember
Back in
things
the
that I
day.
don't, but I
A
do.
photograph of the three of us.
And Rishi Sunak's smaller than you
When he
imagine.
was PM, yeah.
Surely not. He couldn't be smaller than I imagine.
He's very charming, but he's very small.
But maybe
he makes me look towering figure.
Maybe he's grown in stature today because of this, Andrew.
Well,
has he not?
I think it won't. I think it. Yeah. Is this Cameron coming out? No. It's not. No, very boring.
Do we recognise?
Yeah, I think we'll see what it's like at the end of the day, but this is a complete white rabbit out the hat.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I predict you're going to have a very interesting Britain's newsroom with Bev Turner in just a few moments' time. But before that, we're going to take a look back at perhaps the most controversial Home Secretary of modern times. That is Suella Braverman, who is no longer Home Secretary and soon to be replaced, we believe, by James Cleverly. Let's take a look.
I will not be hectored by out-of-touch lefties, or anyone, for that matter.
Suella Braverman divided opinion. Her detractors gave her the name Cruella, seeing the former Home Secretary as ruthless in her conservative principles. Perhaps those same qualities were what drew legions of Conservatives on the right of the party to support her. The child of immigrants, the future Home Secretary read law at Cambridge, where she was elected chairman of the University Conservative Association. She went on to earn a master's in European and French law from Pantheon-Sorbonne University in Paris. After working as a barrister through the 2000s and several unsuccessful attempts to stand for Parliament, Braverman was elected in the safe Conservative seat of Fareham in 2015. Her political career was forged in the fires of the Brexit referendum, opposing her party leader in declaring for leave, and, after the referendum, chairing the hardline Brexit-supporting European Research Group of Conservative MPs. She became known as a Brexit Spartan, having voted against Theresa May's Brexit deal on all 3 occasions, leading to May's resignation as Prime Minister.
I'm about to go to Buckingham Palace to tender my resignation to Her Majesty the Queen.
Under Boris Johnson, Braverman's star rose, becoming Attorney General in February 2020. In the role, she was accused of politically driven meddling by referring the acquittal of the Black Lives Matter activists who tore down Bristol's Colston statue to the Court of Appeal. Despite the criticism, she was later vindicated when the Lord Chief Justice concluded significant damage to property was not covered by the right to protest. As Boris Johnson's government was collapsing, Braverman announced her intention to stand in the subsequent leadership election, although she did not resign her role. She stood on a right-wing platform and was eliminated in the second round.
Suella Braverman is eliminated from the contest.
Under Liz Truss, Braverman became Home Secretary, albeit resigning after 43 days following a row over migration liberalisation and what she described as a technical breach of the ministerial code over the sharing of a document from her personal email address. Just days later, however, she was reappointed to the role by the new Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. In it, she made stopping small boat arrivals on England's southern coast her driving mission, from championing the Rwanda partnership negotiated by her predecessor to steering the landmark illegal migration bill through Parliament. With the Home Secretary gone, many on the left will cheer. However, Rishi Sunak is now more exposed and vulnerable on his right.
Well, it's good morning. It's 9:30 on Monday, the 13th of November. This is Britain's News on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
So, if you are just tuning in, Suella has been sacked. The Home Secretary has been fired after days of speculation and the protest this weekend where she was accused of stirring up the violence.
And all eyes are on number 10 this morning. The Conservative Party said Rishi Sunak is conducting a ministerial reshuffle as he strengthens his team in government to deliver long-term decisions for a brighter future. We're going to bring you the latest developments as they happen.